most dangerous creature in Britain spent the next 5 years sleeping beneath a school full of children, and the only thing preventing it from waking was a 12-year-old boy who had asked it politely to take a nap. That was the situation. That was what happened when Harry Potter walked into the Chamber of Secrets to save Ginny Weasley, opened his mouth to scream at a 60-foot serpent, and discovered that the fragment of Voldemort's soul lodged in his forehead outranked a diary. The basilisk, bound by Salazar Slytherin's 1,000-year-old enchantment to obey the heir's commands, heard two voices giving contradictory orders and chose the one attached to actual soul, rather than a memory preserved in ink. Harry said, "Stop." The basilisk stopped. Harry said, "Destroy the diary." The basilisk drove a fang through it. And then Harry, standing in the chamber with a dying Horcrux and a rescued girl and a creature that could end civilizations, said the only thing he could think of: go back to sleep. The basilisk went back to sleep. Tonight we're following what happened after that, through the years at Hogwarts, through the war, through every moment when a boy with a weapon in the basement had to decide whether to use it. Settle in, let the castle close around you, and let's find out what this decision costs. The chamber was quiet after the diary died. The ink had stopped bleeding. Riddle's shade had dissolved, and Ginny was breathing again. The torches along the walls had dimmed to a low greenish flicker, and somewhere in the dark, the basilisk was settling back into the coil she'd occupied for most of the last millennium, curled around the base of Slytherin's statue, 60 feet of muscle against stone worn smooth by centuries of contact. Harry could hear her breathing, slow, deep, vibrating through the floor, like standing too close to a cathedral organ. "Harry," Ginny whispered, "is it still alive?" "She's sleeping. We need to go. Can you walk?" Fawkes carried them up. Ron was waiting. They brought Ginny to the hospital wing, the diary to Dumbledore. Dumbledore listened without interrupting. When Harry finished, the office was quiet, except for the fire popping and the rain against the windows. "You commanded the basilisk," Dumbledore said. "I told her to sleep. And if the order changes, it won't. You are 12 years old." "I know how old I am, Professor. 12-year-olds change their minds." "Not about this." Dumbledore studied him, then nodded slowly. "For now, the basilisk sleeps, but Harry, when Voldemort returns, his soul may outrank the fragment. The binding answers to the heir, and Voldemort is the true heir. Your authority may not hold." The thought was cold. Harry hadn't considered it. "You're telling me the clock is running." "I am telling you that the creature in the basement is safe under your command, only until the balance of power shifts. And the balance will shift. It always does." Hermione learned about the basilisk from her hospital bed, still stiff from the petrification, and skipped shock entirely. "The binding! It's a hierarchy. The fragment outranks the diary because actual soul outranks a preserved memory? That's what happened. And Voldemort's primary soul, when reconstituted, might outrank the fragment. Dumbledore thinks so. Or the fragment might hold because of familiarity. The binding might respond to sustained presence rather than nominal authority. You've been connected since infancy. Voldemort's been a wraith for years. She was reaching for a quill. The binding must be documented somewhere, and we need roosters. Roosters? The rooster's crow is fatal to basilisks. If the worst happens, roosters are the backup. Harry ordered 6. They were housed in Hagrid's paddock, where they crowed at 5 every morning. "The roosters," McGonagall said, "every morning, for the next 5 years." Ron's reaction was simpler. He listened to the full briefing on the train home, looked at the cauldron cake in his hand, and said, "I feel like this cauldron cake should be doing something more significant." Then more quietly, "What do you need me to do?" "Be here." "I was going to be here anyway. I know, that's why I need you." Ginny found Harry in the common room the night before the train. She sat beside him by the dying fire and was quiet for a long time. "I opened the chamber," she said finally. "The diary used my hands. My hands released the basilisk." "The diary controlled you." "The diary made me want to. The wanting felt like mine." She stared at the embers. "The basilisk and I were both instruments, both following commands we didn't choose. You're not in the chain, Ginny. The chain is riddle, diary, basilisk. You were the paper the diary was written on, not the ink. That's either the kindest thing anyone said to me, or the worst metaphor I've ever heard. Can it be both?" "It's both." She stood up. "Good night, Harry." Hermione began her research immediately, which meant she spent the last 2 weeks of term buried in the restricted section with special permission from Dumbledore. Research into Founder-era enchantments. I cannot tell you why. She found fragments. Not a complete understanding the binding was 1,000 years old, and Slytherin had not left an instruction manual, but fragments. "It's tied to the Fidelius," she told Harry on the train home, with ink on her nose and a stack of parchment bristling with bookmarks. Not the Fidelius itself, but the same kind of magic. The Fidelius hides a secret inside a person's soul. The binding hides the basilisk's will inside the heir's authority. Same principle, containment through soul magic. The basilisk's will is locked inside the binding. Locked, yes, not destroyed. The will still exists, it's just contained, overridden by the heir's commands, like a voice behind a closed door. The voice is still speaking. Nobody can hear it. So when I give commands, you're speaking louder than the voice behind the door. Your commands reach the basilisk. Her own will doesn't. And if the door opened? Then the basilisk would hear her own will for the first time in 1,000 years. She'd have choice. Real choice, not the illusion of choice that the binding provides, when the command happens to align with her preference. Can the door be opened? Theoretically, the heir who holds the binding can choose to release it. The release would require Parseltongue. The same authority that maintains the binding could dissolve it, but the consequences are unpredictable. A creature whose will has been suppressed for a millennium, what happens when that suppression lifts? Nobody knows. Nobody's ever freed a basilisk. Nobody's ever freed anything from a modified Fidelius containment. The research is non-existent. We'd be the first. We're always the first, Harry said. That's less reassuring than you think it is. Before he left for the summer, Harry went back to the chamber. He'd asked the basilisk to carve stairs into the pipe. The chamber's stonework responded to Parseltongue, reshaping itself at the language's command, so the descent was merely dark rather than disgusting. "Hello," he said. The basilisk stirred, tectonic. He felt it through his shoes. She said, "You are back. Why?" "I wanted to check on you. I'm going home tomorrow," she said. The builders and the speakers and the boy with the diary, none of them checked. They commanded, they deployed, they left. You are the first to return without a command. I'll always come back, she said. That is a statement about the future. The future is long. I have lived 1,000 years of future. Then you know I mean it, she said. I know you believe you mean it. Belief and certainty are cousins, not twins. But the belief is, noted. McGonagall called a staff meeting the next morning. Harry learned about it from McGonagall herself, who stopped him in the corridor with an expression suggesting she had recently been arguing at volume. "Mr. Potter, I have been informed there is a basilisk beneath the school. My concern is logistics." "Logistics? If you are ill, if you are unconscious, if you are away during holidays, what happens to the sleep command when you have the flu?" Harry hadn't considered this. "The command holds regardless of my physical state," he said, hoping it was true. "You hope? Has this been tested?" It hadn't. McGonagall arranged a test over Christmas. Harry in the hospital wing with a controlled sneezing hex, while McGonagall monitored the chamber entrance through an alarm enchantment she'd designed for the purpose. The command held. McGonagall documented everything in a file that grew over the years to 17 pages of increasingly specific contingency protocols. She never gave Harry a speech about power or restraint. She gave him a filing system. The filing system was more useful than any speech. Percy Weasley contributed 8 additional pages of regulatory compliance framework, complete with footnotes. It was the first time Percy had voluntarily bent a rule because the rules said destroy and Percy's contribution said manage. And the gap between those words was, for Percy, a revolution. The summer passed. The Ministry learned about the Basilisk through Lucius Malfoy. The Ministry wanted to destroy it. Harry wrote to Dumbledore, "They need me to open the door. I won't open the door." Dumbledore wrote back, "I have informed the Ministry the situation is under management." The word management is doing considerable work in that sentence. During his first September visit, Harry asked a question nobody had asked the Basilisk in 1,000 years. "What do you want?" The chamber was quiet. The water dripped. The question hung in the dark like a torch that hadn't been lit yet. "Want," the Basilisk repeated. "If you could have anything, if the binding wasn't there, and the chamber wasn't there, and you could go anywhere, do anything, what would you want?" "Speaker, I have not been asked this question before." "I know." The not being asked has been the condition of my existence. For 1,000 years, the question has been, what does the heir want? What does the builder want? What does the binding want? The wanting has belonged to others. My wanting has been irrelevant. It's not irrelevant to me. I know. The knowing is why the question is difficult. The question is difficult because I have spent 1,000 years not having wants. The wanting apparatus has atrophied. The capability for wanting exists. I want to sleep. I want the silence. I want the absence of commands. But these wants are negative, wants defined by the absence of bad things. I do not know what I want in the positive sense. I do not know what I would reach for. You would not reach for anything? I would reach for the dark, the comfortable dark, the familiar stone, the dripping of water. These are the things I have. These are the things I know. The reaching would be for the continuation of what I know. You want things to stay the same. I want things to stay the same because change has historically meant new commands, new violence. The same becoming different has meant, in my experience, the different becoming worse. What if the different were better? Better is theoretical. Theoretical requires imagination. Imagination requires experience. My experience is dark, stone, water, commands, violence, sleep. From this experience, I cannot imagine better. I can only imagine less worse. Less worse. Less worse is the ceiling of my aspiration. Less worse is a gift. Less worse is what you have given me. The visits are less worse. The Patronus light is less worse. The large warm one's voice is less worse. Hagrid's voice is less worse. Hagrid's voice is I do not have a word. The word better is unavailable because my imagination cannot construct it, but the voice is warm, and the warm is preferable. Preferable is the word I can reach, not better, preferable. Preferable is a good start. Preferable is the first step of a creature that has not walked for 1,000 years. The first step is sufficient. Harry climbed the stairs that night and thought about a creature whose capacity for wanting had atrophied through a millennium of not being asked. A creature that could not imagine better because better required reference points that the chamber did not provide. A creature that was learning, slowly, through leaves and soil and Patronus light, that less worse was not the ceiling of possibility, that the ceiling was higher than the chamber's ceiling, higher than the castle's towers, higher than anything the creature could currently imagine. The ceiling would rise. Harry would raise it. Not through commands or binding or authority, through gifts, through visits, through the slow, patient accumulation of evidence that the world contained things other than dark and stone and violence. One leaf at a time, one visit at a time, one pumpkin description at a time, the ceiling would rise. Third year began with Dementors on the train. Harry visited the chamber monthly. The visits lasted 15 or 20 minutes, and mostly Harry talked. He told the Basilisk about the school, Quidditch, classes, Hagrid's hippogriff. She listened and occasionally responded with observations that arrived fully formed and disconcertingly sharp. On the Christmas train ride, Ron asked, "What does she do all day?" "She sleeps, not like human sleep, deeper. She's aware the way sleeping people are aware of sounds in the room, but she's not thinking continuously." "What does she think about when she is thinking?" "The dark, the temperature. She counts water drips. She's been counting for centuries. Counting drips for centuries. That's either meditative or horrifying." "She asked me about Quidditch once. She wanted to know why humans chase balls through the air." "What did you tell her?" "I said it was fun. She asked me to define fun. I tried. She didn't understand, not because she's stupid, she's probably the most intelligent creature I've ever spoken to, but because fun is the opposite of something, the opposite of boredom. She's had boredom but never the opposite, so fun doesn't land." "She doesn't understand fun," Hermione said quietly. "She's never seen snow, she's never seen the lake, she's never seen anything except the inside of the chamber, 1,000 years without ever seeing the sun." The compartment was quiet. Rain streaked the windows. "Can we bring her something?" Ron said. "Something from outside, something she can feel. She can't see anything without killing, but she can smell and feel texture. Then bring her a leaf, something from the grounds, something she's never touched." Harry brought a leaf on his next visit, an oak leaf, autumn red. He placed it on the stone floor, and the basilisk explored it with her tongue. "Light," she said, "dry, veined, a texture I have not encountered, different from stone. Most things are different from stone. I did not know that. I knew, intellectually, that the world above contained things other than stone, but the knowing and the touching are different." Ron brought grass next time, a handful of Hogwarts lawn, still damp from the morning. The basilisk explored it with her tongue and said, "Alive. This texture is alive. The leaf was dead, dry, finished. This is still growing. Grass grows," Harry translated for Ron, who was standing with his eyes closed and his arms folded, in the specific expression of a boy who was being brave about standing in a room with a creature that could kill him if it looked at him. Tell her it grows back," Ron said. "If you cut grass, it grows back. It doesn't stop." Harry translated. The basilisk processed. "A living thing that repairs itself when damaged. The resilience is, I do not experience resilience, my scales do not regrow, my injuries persist. A thing that regrows, the regrowing is. A capability I envy." "The basilisk envies grass," Ron said when Harry translated. "The basilisk envies the capacity for renewal. That's genuinely moving, and I refuse to be moved by a basilisk's opinion about grass." Hermione brought a pine cone the following week. The basilisk spent 10 minutes exploring it with her tongue, the forked tip tracing the spiral pattern of the scales. "The pattern is mathematical," the basilisk said. "The spiral follows a progression. Each scale is placed according to a ratio. The ratio is beautiful." "She says the pine cone is mathematically beautiful," Harry told Hermione. Hermione's face lit up. "The Fibonacci sequence. Pine cone scales follow the Fibonacci spiral. Each row is the sum of the two preceding rows. She can feel the mathematics through her tongue. She can feel pattern, texture, ratio. She says the ratio is beautiful. The basilisk has discovered the Fibonacci sequence through tactile exploration of a pine cone. Harry, she's doing mathematics through her tongue. Is that significant?" "That is evidence of abstract reasoning capabilities that are," Harry, The Ministry classifies basilisks as beasts. Beasts are creatures that lack the capacity for abstract thought. This creature just identified a mathematical ratio through touch. Beasts don't do that. Sentient beings do that. So the basilisk is sentient. The basilisk is provably sentient. The pinecone proves it. I need to write this down. Hermione wrote it down. The observation that the subject identified Fibonacci ratio through tactile exploration without prompting, demonstrating capacity for pattern recognition and aesthetic evaluation consistent with sentient cognition, became Exhibit A in the Basilisk Protection Act, cited 14 years later as evidence that the creature in the chamber met the legal definition of sentience. A pinecone saved the basilisk. Not the sleep command, not the visits, not the Parseltongue authority. A pinecone explored by a tongue demonstrating that the creature in the dark could recognize beauty in the mathematics of a seed. Hagrid brought soil, rich, dark, worm-threaded from the vegetable garden. The basilisk pressed her body against it and was quiet for a very long time. "This is different," she said finally. The leaf was surface. The grass was surface. The pinecone was structure. This is depth. This contains things, movement, life. The things in this earth are alive, small and alive and moving. "Worms," Harry said. "The soil has worms. Worms. Things that live in the dark. Things that live in the earth. Things that are like me. In the dark. In the earth. Small and alive and present." "You're identifying with the worms," Harry said. "I am identifying with creatures that live in the dark and that are alive. The identification is new. I have not previously identified with anything. I have been singular, one of a kind, alone in category. The worms are a category I share, dark-dwelling creatures. The sharing is welcome." Harry told Hagrid that the basilisk had identified with worms. Hagrid's eyes went bright. "The worms," Hagrid said. "She's never seen another creature. She's been alone for 1,000 years, and the first creatures she identifies with are worms, in the soil, living in the dark." She said the sharing of the category was welcome. "Course it is, course it is. Every creature needs a group, a kind. Something that says, you're not the only one, even if the something is worms. Especially if the something is worms." "Especially if the something is worms," Hagrid agreed, and blew his nose into a tablecloth-sized handkerchief, and went to dig more soil from the garden, because the basilisk had found her first companion species, and the companion species was earthworms. And Hagrid was going to provide the best earthworm-bearing soil that the Hogwarts grounds could produce. Hermione brought a pinecone. Hagrid brought soil, rich, dark, worm-threaded, from the vegetable garden. The basilisk explored each gift, and the chamber gradually accumulated something it hadn't held before, evidence that the world was larger than the dark. "The gifts make the chamber feel less complete," the basilisk told Harry, "less like the entire world and more like a room in a larger building." "The chamber is a room in a larger building. I am learning that. The learning is late, but the lateness does not diminish it." The Marauder's map showed the basilisk. Harry discovered this on the first night, unfolding the map in bed with the curtains drawn. Every floor, every corridor, every person, and beneath the lowest level, in a space labelled Chamber of Secrets, an enormous dot. The dot was labelled the Basilisk of Slytherin, and occupied roughly a quarter of the chamber. "The map shows her," Harry told Ron. "Shows her doing what?" "Sleeping. The dot doesn't move." "A non-moving dot?" "The dot is enormous, Ron, bigger than any other dot on the map. Because the basilisk is bigger than any other thing in the castle. Harry, is this significant? I can monitor her every night. If the dot moves, then something's wrong." Harry checked the map every night. The dot never moved. The monitoring became bedtime routine. The map also showed when other people approached the chamber entrance. In November, Snape's dot appeared in Myrtle's bathroom at 2 a.m, stayed 20 minutes, and left. Harry mentioned it to Dumbledore, who mentioned it to Snape, who did not visit the bathroom again. "You've turned a prank map into a security system," Hermione observed. "I've turned a prank map into a basilisk baby monitor." The phrase basilisk baby monitor should not exist. And yet, during a February visit, the basilisk told Harry about Slytherin. The builder was practical, not cruel. The distinction matters. He used me the way a farmer uses a plough, without sentiment. The cruelty came later, from the descendants. You developed feelings over time? The binding was designed to suppress emotion. Slytherin wanted a weapon, not a companion. But enchantments degrade. The suppression weakened. Emotion grew in the cracks, the way plants grow through stone. What was the first emotion you felt? Boredom, approximately 300 years ago. The recognition that the unchanging was unpleasant. Before boredom, I had no opinion about the dark. After boredom, I preferred the dripping of water to the silence. And after boredom, curiosity, 200 years ago, directed upward. I could feel the vibrations from the castle, footsteps, large groups moving. The feast vibrations are distinctive. I have felt approximately 200 autumn feasts through the floor. What do feast vibrations feel like? Warmth, movement, something I eventually identified as joy. The identification took decades. Harry sat in the dark and thought about a creature lying beneath a school for 2 centuries, feeling children's joy through stone, slowly developing the capacity to recognize what she was feeling. "You learned about happiness by lying beneath it," he said. "I learned about many things. Happiness, grief, the specific vibration of a castle under attack. I felt both wars. The second was worse, more desperate." "You felt the wars?" "I felt everything for 200 years, without the ability to participate. And I lay in the dark and felt the joy and the grief and the wars and the feasts and the silence between terms, and I could do nothing." This was something Harry hadn't understood, that the imprisonment was not just isolation, but forced spectatorship. 2 centuries of feeling the world above and being unable to touch it. Hermione visited the chamber once, in April. She went with Harry, eyes closed, guided by Harry's hand the way Hagrid was guided. She sat on the stone floor and was quiet for a long time. "I was petrified by her," Hermione said. "Not to the basilisk. The basilisk couldn't understand English. To Harry, to the dark. I know. I saw the eyes, in the mirror. Mrs. Norris's reflection showed me the eyes, and the eyes froze me, and I spent 2 months as stone, 2 months of nothing, not sleep, not unconsciousness, nothing, an absence of experience. Hermione, let me finish. The absence was terrible. The absence is my worst memory, worse than being chased through the ministry, worse than Malfoy Manor. The absence, the 2 months of being removed from my own life. The basilisk didn't choose to petrify you. I know, the diary commanded it. The basilisk obeyed." She paused. "I came down here to see the space, to sit where she sleeps, to understand the scale, the 1,000 years. And 2 months of absence was my worst experience. 1,000 years of existing in the dark, obeying commands, feeling the world above without being able to touch it. 1,000 years of the absence I felt for 2 months. The comparison makes my 2 months small, not insignificant, but small, within a context that is vast." She was quiet. The water dripped. The basilisk breathed. "Can you tell her something for me?" Hermione asked. "In Parseltongue?" "What?" Tell her I understand. I was stoned for 2 months, and she was stoned for 1,000 years. Not literally, but the effect, the removal from the world, the being made into a thing rather than allowed to be a person. I was made into a statue for 2 months. She was made into a weapon for 1,000 years. The making is the crime, not the creature, Harry translated. The basilisk was quiet for a long time. The questioning one came to the dark, the basilisk said. The questioning one who was turned to stone by my gaze. The one I was commanded to petrify. She wanted to understand. The understanding is reciprocal. The questioning one understands the removal from selfhood, the being made into a thing. A pause. Tell the questioning one, the removal ends, the selfhood returns. The returning is slow, but it returns, Harry translated. Hermione wiped her eyes. I know, she said. I know it returns. It took me a year for the stone feeling to leave, to stop feeling like I might freeze again at any moment. She says, the stone feeling is familiar. She felt it for centuries. The feeling faded when the visits began, when you started visiting, when someone started treating her as something other than stone. Hermione was quiet for a long time. Then she said to the dark, Thank you. I needed the 1,000 years to make my 2 months survivable. The basilisk did not understand the words. The basilisk understood the tone. The tone was gratitude. Gratitude from one creature who had been turned to stone to another creature who had been turned to something worse. Hagrid found out about the basilisk because Hagrid found out about dangerous creatures the way magnets found iron. He descended to the chamber with his eyes closed, guided by Harry's hand, sat on the floor, and began talking about pumpkins. The basilisk couldn't understand English. She understood the tone. What did the large one say? She asked Harry afterward. He said you were beautiful. A long pause. I have been called weapon, monster, beast. The word beautiful is unexpected. Hagrid sees differently. The large one has limited survival instincts. The limited survival instincts appear to correlate with an expansive capacity for appreciation. Harry laughed. He hadn't expected the basilisk to be funny. The humour was dry, observational, delivered with the timing of a creature that had spent a millennium with nothing to do except think. Hagrid visited monthly after that. The chamber accumulated something it hadn't held before, the particular warmth that came from being visited by someone who wanted nothing except to be there. During the Christmas feast, Harry felt something through the connection that surprised him, a warmth, faint and unfamiliar, rising from beneath the castle. The basilisk had felt the feast, 300 people eating and laughing and pulling crackers, and the emotional warmth had travelled through the stone and touched the creature sleeping 5 floors below. The warmth had calmed her. Harry could feel it, a deeper settling, a relaxation, as though the basilisk was being soothed by the distant echo of 300 people enjoying themselves. She can feel the feast, Harry told Hermione, so through the binding, through the castle, the joy travels through the stone. A basilisk is being soothed by a Christmas dinner. The castle carries emotion. She's been feeling the feast for 200 years, she told me, and the feasts make her sleep better. Student happiness improves basilisk dormancy. Hermione pulled out a quill. Harry, that means maintaining the school's emotional well-being is, indirectly, maintaining the sleep command. Student welfare is basilisk security. That's either the most cynical or the most beautiful sentence I've ever heard. Can it be both? McGonagall added it to the contingency file, page 12. The Dementors arrived in September and reached the chamber. Harry learned this during a November visit. The basilisk was restless, shifting against the stone. Something cold, above. It feeds. It takes. The warmth I have begun to accumulate. The visits. The sound of the large one's voice. The cold things are taking it. Harry went to Dumbledore. The Dementors are reaching the chamber. She says they're feeding on what she's built. The basilisk has built something the Dementors can feed on, Dumbledore said carefully. positive emotion. She's been developing it since the visit started. Dumbledore was quiet. Then, a basilisk with emotions to protect adds a dimension to this situation that the Ministry's protocol does not address. The Ministry's protocol doesn't address anything except killing. No, it rarely does. Herbology provided an unexpected insight in September. Professor Sprout was teaching about venomous tentacula, the care of magical plants that were dangerous, beautiful, and intelligent enough to resent mistreatment. The lesson involved approaching the tentacula correctly, calmly, with clear intent, without sudden movements. The tentacula responds to the handler's magical intent, Sprout said. If you approach with aggressive intent, even subconsciously, the plant will react aggressively. If you approach with calm intent, the plant calms. Harry thought about the basilisk. Professor, he said, after class, the tentacula responds to intent, not commands, not language, just what the handler is feeling. Magical creatures and plants are sensitive to the emotional intent of nearby wizards, yes. The sensitivity varies by species, but the principle is universal. Magic is relational, Mr. Potter. Magic is not a force you apply to things. Magic is a conversation between the wizard and the world. A conversation. The wand channels the wizard's intent. The intent reaches the target. The target responds. The response is shaped by the intent. Kind intent produces kinder results. Hostile intent produces hostility. The magic mirrors the magician. And if the magician is connected to a creature through an ancient enchantment, if the magician's intent reaches the creature constantly, not just during spells, then the creature is living inside the magician's intent. The creature is bathed in it. The way a plant is bathed in sunlight, the quality of the intent shapes the creature's experience. The quality of my intent shapes the basilisk's experience. Sprout looked at him. She knew about the basilisk, all the staff knew, per Dumbledore's briefing, but Sprout had never discussed it with Harry directly. Sprout's area was plants, not serpents. Mr. Potter, if you are asking me whether your emotional state, your intent, your care, your consistency is affecting the basilisk's experience of her own existence, the answer is almost certainly yes. The binding connects you. Your intent travels through the connection constantly. The creature at the other end of the connection is living inside your intent the way a plant lives inside sunlight. And if the sunlight is good, then the plant grows. Mr. Potter, the plant grows. Harry left the greenhouse and walked across the grounds in the September sunlight and thought about a creature in the dark who was growing, not physically, but emotionally, psychologically, in the internal ways that growth happened when the conditions were right. The basilisk's emotional development, the boredom, the curiosity, the appreciation of Hagrid's warmth, the development was happening because Harry's intent, travelling through the binding, was providing the conditions for growth. Harry was the basilisk's sunlight, not through any specific action, through presence, through the quality of his attention, through the specific, sustained daily reality of caring about the creature at the other end of the connection. The caring was the magic, not the Parseltongue, not the binding, not the soul fragment. The caring. In October, Harry cast a Patronus in the chamber on impulse, and the effect was immediate. The stag erupted silver bright into a space that had never held that kind of light, and the basilisk's entire body relaxed. Her breathing deepened. The restlessness subsided. "The light," she said. "What is it?" "A Patronus. Concentrated happy memory. The warmth is tangible, like the feast vibrations, but direct, like what the cold ones take, but given." Harry began casting a Patronus during every visit. The stag prowled the chamber floor, and the stone gradually absorbed traces of the charm, soaking up the warmth, the way Azkaban's stone had soaked up despair. but opposite. The chamber's ancient cold softened. Not physically, something more subtle, something that felt, when Harry touched the walls, like the stone was glad someone was there. During a December visit, Harry asked, "What happened when Slytherin left?" The basilisk was quiet for a long time. The question touched something old, something that predated the binding's emotional suppression, something that lived in the creature's earliest memories. The builder argued with the others. The argument was about who belongs, who deserves the teaching. The builder believed the teaching should be restricted to those who carried magical blood from magical families. The others disagreed. Muggle-borns. The builder did not use that word. The builder said the unprepared, the unrooted, those without heritage in the craft. The builder's argument was not hatred. The builder's argument was concern. Concern that the unprepared would be harmed by magic they did not understand. Concern that the unrooted would dilute the traditions. Concern that turned into bigotry. Concern that became bigotry across generations. The builder's concern was protective, misguided, arrogant, but not hateful. The hatred came later, through the descendants, through the line. The builder's concern was transformed by his inheritors into something the builder would not have recognized. Slytherin wasn't a blood supremacist. Slytherin was a man who believed, wrongly, that magical education should be reserved for those with magical inheritance. The belief was wrong. The belief was also common in the builder's era. The other founders disagreed, not because the belief was monstrous, but because the belief was incorrect. Gryffindor believed talent was talent regardless of origin. Ravenclaw believed knowledge belonged to anyone who sought it. Hufflepuff believed exclusion was always wrong. And Slytherin left because he lost the argument. Slytherin left because the argument became irreconcilable. The builder could not accept students he considered unprepared. The others could not accept, excluding students based on parentage. The disagreement was genuine. Both sides believed they were protecting students. Both sides were, in their way, correct, and both sides were, in their way, wrong. Both sides were wrong? Slytherin was wrong to exclude. The others were wrong to assume that inclusion alone was sufficient preparation. Some Muggle-born students were unprepared, not because of blood, but because of culture. Entering a magical world with no context, no family knowledge, no inherited understanding, the entering was difficult. The difficulty was real. Slytherin's response, exclusion, was wrong. But the difficulty he identified was genuine. Nobody's ever told me that Slytherin had a point. Slytherin had a point that he expressed badly and that his descendants corrupted absolutely. The point does not justify the expression. The expression does not negate the point. You're very nuanced for a giant snake. I have had 1,000 years to develop nuance. The nuance has not been requested before. Previous speakers preferred the simple version. Slytherin was right. Muggle-borns are lesser. The simple version is convenient. The simple version justifies the commands. And the complex version? The complex version says, the founders disagreed because education is complicated, and people who care about it will argue about it forever. The forever is what the castle is for. The castle was built to contain the argument, not to resolve it, to contain it, to let the argument continue across centuries, through generations, producing, occasionally, wisdom. The castle is a container for an argument about education. The castle is a container for an ongoing argument about education. The argument has been ongoing for 1,000 years. The argument has not been resolved. The argument will not be resolved. The argument is the education. Harry thought about that for a long time. A castle built not to answer a question, but to hold one, to hold the disagreement between four brilliant, flawed, passionate people who couldn't agree on who deserved to learn magic, and who built a school to contain their disagreement because the containment was more productive than the resolution. The basilisk was part of that containment. Slytherin's insurance policy, the creature in the basement that said, if the argument goes wrong, if the exclusion argument loses, and the unprepared are admitted, and the traditions are diluted, the creature can enforce the builder's position by force. The creature had never wanted to enforce anything. The creature had wanted to sleep. The enforcement was the builder's will, imposed through the binding, maintained through the soul-level enchantment that locked the creature's own will behind a door. Harry was opening that door. Slowly. Visit by visit. Gift by gift. One leaf, one soil sample, one Patronus at a time. The door would open fully someday. The will behind the door would emerge, and the creature that had been Slytherin's insurance policy would become something else, something the founders had not anticipated, something that none of the four brilliant, flawed, passionate builders could have imagined. A creature that chose. Lupin arrived in September and changed how Harry understood the situation, though not through any grand speech about power, through a single observation. I knew someone kept in a cage, Lupin told Harry after class in October, a condition imposed on him as a child, dangerous once a month, harmless the rest of the time, and a world that judged him by the dangerous days. You're talking about yourself, and about the basilisk, a creature judged by its worst capability. The basilisk, sleeping in the chamber, is harmless. The basilisk obeying a kill command is lethal. The sleeping days and the killing days are not the same creature. It was the parallel simplicity that made it stick. Lupin died at the Battle of Hogwarts, fighting in his human form on one of the harmless days. The Shrieking Shack confrontation in June produced a bluff Harry hadn't planned. Snape disarmed him. Harry, wandless, facing Snape's wand, pointed at Sirius, said, "Professor, I'd think carefully. My connection to the basilisk carries emotion. Right now I'm very angry." He was bluffing. The connection probably couldn't reach the chamber from this distance, but Snape had heard about the cracked desk. During a detention, Harry's anger had travelled through the binding, and the basilisk had stirred in her sleep, the disturbance rattling through the castle's foundations and splitting Umbridge's desktop. Harry was getting ahead of himself. That hadn't happened yet, but the principle was the same. Strong emotion reached the basilisk. Actually, the desk incident came later. What Snape knew was that the binding carried emotion. What Snape didn't know was the range. Snape lowered the wand. Halfway, the truth about Pettigrew emerged. "You bluffed Snape with a sleeping basilisk," Ron said afterward. "It worked. That's not a defense." Sirius Black entered Harry's life that summer through miracles from hiding. "So you've got a basilisk," Sirius said, gaunt and grinning in the mirror. "She's not a pet." "What is she?" Harry couldn't answer. The basilisk wasn't a pet, wasn't an ally, wasn't a weapon. She was something there wasn't a word for. "I spent 12 years in Azkaban," Sirius said, "in a cell, in the dark. The Dementors came and went, and the walls didn't change, and after a while I stopped noticing the difference between days because the days were all the same." "She told me the dark is comfortable." "Of course she did. I told myself Azkaban was manageable. You tell yourself whatever you need to survive a cage. The telling doesn't make it true." He paused. "You can't open her cage. The eyes kill, she can't come out. But you can visit. And every visit is a crack in the wall. Every visit says, there's a world outside this dark, and someone in it remembers you're here." The summer before fourth year brought a discovery about distance. At the Dursleys, 500 miles from Hogwarts, Harry expected the connection to the basilisk to fade. It didn't fade. It changed. The connection became subtler, not the clear awareness of her breathing and emotional state that he felt in the castle, but a background presence, a warmth at the edge of perception, like the memory of a fire in a room you'd recently left. "She's still there," Harry told Hermione in a letter. "Even from Surrey. I can't feel details, not her breathing, not her mood, just presence. She exists, she's sleeping, she's okay." Hermione wrote back, "The binding is tied to the heir's soul, not to physical proximity. The connection persists because the soul fragment in your scar doesn't know about distance. Soul magic doesn't operate on geography, it operates on relationship. The relationship holds regardless of where you are." "Soul magic doesn't care about postcodes," Ron added in a postscript to Hermione's letter. "Also, Hermione made me write that I'm doing my homework. I'm not doing my homework. Don't tell her." The presence was comforting in a way Harry hadn't expected. At the Dursleys, where comfort was in short supply, where the house was clean and cold and organised around the absence of anything unusual, the faint warmth of the basilisk's presence was the only magical thing Harry could feel. The warmth said, "You are not imaginary. The world you belong to is real. The castle is real. The creature in the dark is real. You are real." Harry spent the summer doing chores and feeling, faintly, the presence of a creature sleeping 500 miles north, and the feeling was enough. Dudley's gang cornered Harry in the alley behind Magnolia Crescent in July. Standard encounter. The gang blocked the exits. Dudley said something clever, by Dudley's standards, and the situation escalated toward the traditional conclusion of Harry being punched. Harry's connection to the basilisk stirred. Not the 3-second impulse. The basilisk was 500 miles away, and the connection was too faint for deployment, even if Harry had wanted it. But the connection stirred in the way a sleeping guard dog stirred when it heard a noise. The basilisk in the chamber registered Harry's fear through the soul-level connection and responded with a faint pulse of attention. The attention didn't help. The attention didn't prevent Piers Polkiss from punching Harry in the stomach. Harry fell against the alley wall, waited for the gang to get bored, and sat in the alley afterward thinking about the relationship between having power and being powerless. The basilisk was sleeping in Scotland. The gang was in Little Whinging. The power was irrelevant because the power was in the wrong place and the wrong form. A weapon of mass destruction in a castle 500 miles away did not help you in an alley in Surrey. Power was local. Power was specific. The understanding was important because the understanding prevented the 3-second impulse from becoming the 3-second fantasy. The fantasy said, "The basilisk makes you safe." The understanding said, "The basilisk makes you responsible." Safety and responsibility were not the same thing. The Dementors came to Little Whinging in August, the real ones, not the emotional kind. Harry produced a Patronus. The Ministry sent the hearing letter. The summer accelerated toward 5th year. Charlie Weasley visited over Christmas and brought his dragon handler's curiosity. "She's been alive for 1,000 years, Charlie said, after sitting in the chamber with his eyes closed for an hour. The reserve's oldest horntail barely lasted 2 centuries. How does she survive without food? The ley lines, Harry said. The chamber sits on a convergence. She draws on it, absorbs something through the stone. The warmth she talks about isn't heat. It's the magic itself, feeding her. A creature that lives on ambient magic rather than food, Charlie said, with the expression of a man whose understanding of his own field had just been rearranged. Harry, if this is true, everything we think we know about magical creatures is incomplete. We've been feeding creatures that might sustain themselves on magic alone if the environment were rich enough. She's been doing it for 1,000 years. In a ley line convergence beneath one of the most magical buildings on Earth, the richest magical environment in Britain. Of course she survives. She's not starving in a cave. She's living in a magical ocean. Charlie published a paper. The paper used words like ambient sustenance and environmental absorption and was cited 14 times in the first month. The acknowledgements read, "The author thanks H. Potter for access and R. Hagrid for not stepping on the measurement equipment." "My digestion has been published," the basilisk said when Harry told her. "Your digestion has changed how wizards understand magical creatures. I have been alive for 1,000 years, and my primary contribution to human knowledge is how I eat. How you don't eat, that's the point. The distinction between eating and not eating is, yes, I see. The interest is novel. Previously, humans have been interested in me exclusively for my capacity to kill." Fourth year was the Triwizard Tournament, and the tournament was when Harry discovered that the connection to the basilisk went deeper than Parseltongue. It happened during a defense lesson in September. Harry cast a shield charm routine and felt the basilisk stir beneath him, not toward waking, toward attention. The charm's magical release had travelled through the castle's foundations and reached the chamber, and the creature there had registered it as her speaker-casting defensive magic. The binding had been designed for this. Slytherin's enchantment was built to rouse the basilisk when the air fought, to wake the weapon when the weapon was needed. The sleep command sat on top of that ancient instinct, suppressing it. But the instinct was still alive beneath, a presence pressing against a door. Strong magic made the pressing harder. Harry noticed it during the Triwizard Tournament, felt the binding's instinct push against the sleep command during the dragon task, during the lake task, during every moment of intense spellcasting. The pushing was not dangerous. The sleep command held, but the pushing was there, constant, like a headache that didn't quite become a headache. "She stirs when I fight," Harry told Hermione. "The binding wants to wake her when I cast combat magic." "Then we need to strengthen the command, build it deeper, like the difference between writing on a blackboard and carving in stone." Harry doubled his visits, twice a month, reinforcing the sleep command, pressing the word deeper into the binding's ancient architecture. The reinforcement was not a technical process, it was a magical one, intuitive and imprecise, the way all deep magic was imprecise. Harry spoke the command and felt it settle into the binding like water into soil, finding the channels that 1,000 years of use had carved, following them, filling them. By the end of 5th year, the command was as deep as Harry could make it. Whether it was deep enough for a battle, whether it would hold against the combined magical output of hundreds of wizards fighting simultaneously, that was a question that only the battle could answer. Harry cast a shield charm, routine, nothing unusual, and felt the basilisk stir, not toward waking, toward attention. The binding had carried the spell's magical discharge down to the chamber, and the basilisk had interpreted it as her speaker casting defensive magic. The binding, Harry realized, had been designed to wake the basilisk when the air fought. Slytherin had intended the creature as a weapon to be deployed in battle, and the binding was tuned to recognize combat. The sleep command overrode that instinct, but the instinct still lived beneath the command, pressing against it the way water pressed against a dam. Strong magic made the pressing harder. During DA sessions in 5th year, when 20 students cast spells simultaneously, the pressing became insistent, and Harry had to reinforce the sleep command more firmly. During Owls, when 200 students cast practical exams across 3 days, the pressing was almost physical, and Harry found himself whispering, "Sleep," in Parseltongue under his breath, during his charms practical, reinforcing the command while demonstrating the Aguamenti charm for Flitwick. Hermione worked on the problem. The binding's original purpose is still active, she said. The sleep command sits on top of it, but it doesn't erase it. Strong magic above the chamber pushes against your command. Can we strengthen the command? We can layer it, visit more often, reinforce more frequently, build it from a single instruction into something deeper, like the difference between writing something on a blackboard and carving it into stone. Harry doubled his visits, twice a month, descending to the chamber, speaking the sleep command in Parseltongue, pressing the word deeper into the binding. The reinforcement worked. By the end of 5th year, the command held even during concentrated spell casting above, but the larger implication remained. A full battle, hundreds of witches and wizards casting combat magic simultaneously would strain the command in ways that classroom magic never could. The binding would press, the command would resist, and the outcome was uncertain. We need the command carved in stone by the time the war comes, Hermione said. How deep can we carve? I don't know. Nobody's ever had to reinforce a sleep command against a battle. We're inventing this. We're always inventing this, Harry said. Nothing about this situation has ever happened before. The Yule Ball happened in December, and the connection carried something unexpected. Harry was dancing badly with Parvati. His combat instincts did not extend to formal coordination when he felt the basilisk settle into a deeper sleep than he'd ever noticed. The ball's collective happiness was travelling through the castle's foundations, and the basilisk was responding to it the way she'd responded to the feast, but more intensely. 300 people experiencing sustained joy over several hours produced a warmth that reached the chamber and soothed the creature there in a way that individual visits couldn't match. She likes the ball, Harry told Hermione during a break by the punch bowl. She can feel it. The collective happiness. It's calming her. Harry, that's extraordinary. It means the castle carries positive emotions as well as disturbance. The binding connects her to the castle's emotional state. Happy castle, happy basilisk. In essence, yes. The second task involved the lake, and the lake produced an interaction Harry hadn't anticipated. Harry was underwater, gillyweed enhanced, swimming through the murky depths of the Hogwarts lake when he felt the basilisk stir, not because of his emotional state, because of the lake itself. The lake was old. The lake's magical ecosystem was ancient, as old as the castle, maybe older. The magical creatures in the lake, the merpeople, the grindylows, the giant squid, existed in a web of ambient magic that connected to the castle's foundations. The foundations connected to the binding, and the binding connected to the basilisk. Harry, swimming through the lake, felt the basilisk feel the lake, a ripple of awareness, the creature in the dark, registering the presence of the creature in the water, separated by stone and soil and centuries, connected by the magical infrastructure that ran through Hogwarts like veins through a body. The merpeople felt it too. Harry couldn't understand their language, but he could see the change. The way the merpeople nearest the lake bottom shifted, the way they glanced downward, the way the ambient mood of the underwater colony altered when something very large and very old stirred beneath the lake bed. "Did you feel that?" Harry asked Hermione afterward, shivering in a towel on the dock. "Feel what?" "The basilisk, the lake, the connection, the lake's magic, and the castle's magic, and the basilisk's magic, they're all connected. When I was underwater, I could feel the basilisk through the lake. The lake is part of the castle's magical ecosystem. The lake, the forest, the grounds, everything within Hogwarts' boundaries is connected. The founders built the castle on a web of existing magic, ley lines. ancient enchantments, the natural magical field. The basilisk's binding taps into that web. The web connects everything. Everything within the boundaries. Everything. The lake, the forest, the Whomping Willow, the greenhouses. Every magical system within Hogwarts wards is part of the same network, and the basilisk is at the centre. The chamber is on the ley line convergence. The convergence is the heart of the web. The basilisk is at the centre of Hogwarts' magical nervous system. The basilisk has been at the centre of Hogwarts' magical nervous system for 1,000 years. That's why I can feel disturbances through the connection. That's why she can feel the feasts, the exams, the wars. She's at the hub. Everything passes through her. Slytherin didn't just hide a weapon in the basement, Hermione said. He embedded a weapon in the castle's magical infrastructure. He made the basilisk part of the castle. He made the basilisk the castle's immune system, the guardian, the creature at the centre of the web, feeling everything, ready to respond to threats. An immune system that kills by looking. An extremely aggressive immune system. An immune system that I've told to sleep. An immune system that is currently inactive. By design. Your design. The castle's immune system is asleep because I told it to take a nap. Harry, please never phrase it that way to anyone who makes security decisions. The Yule Ball also brought a conversation with Victor Crumb that Harry hadn't expected. Crumb cornered him near the refreshment table, looking as uncomfortable in dress robes as Harry felt. In Bulgaria, Crumb said, we have stories about serpent guardians, creatures bound to protect treasures. The binding is always wrong. The binding always costs the creature. You've heard of binding enchantments. The Bulgarian ministry documented 3 guardian serpents in the 17th century. All 3 were killed. Nobody considered. The stories say nobody asked the serpents what they wanted. Nobody asked mine either, until me. Then you are the first. In all the stories, the first. Crumb's expression was serious, almost solemn. The stories say the serpent cannot free itself. The serpent must be freed by the one who holds the binding. The freeing is, in the stories, always the ending. The ending of the story, the ending of the binding, not the ending of the serpent. The serpent freed becomes something else, not a guardian, not a weapon, something the stories do not have a word for. Something new, something that has never existed before. A creature that was a weapon and is now itself. Harry thought about that for a long time afterward. A creature that was a weapon and was now itself. The transformation from instrument to being. The stories didn't have a word for it because the transformation had happened so rarely that language hadn't caught up. The basilisk would need a new word. Harry didn't know what the word was yet. But someday, when the binding was released and the creature was free, someday there would need to be a word for what the basilisk became. The tournament itself brought Cedric Diggory, who noticed something nobody else had. You chose the hardest approach, Cedric said after the first task, while Pumphrey fussed over Harry's singed sleeve. The flying. People say you could have done it differently. People say a lot of things. People say you have options nobody else has. I have one option nobody else has. And it's not an option, because using it would kill everyone in the stands. Cedric smiled, the smile of a decent person, recognizing decency. I think I'm more impressed by the choosing than by the flying. 5 months later, Cedric died in the graveyard. Harry thought about the basilisk for 3 seconds. 3 seconds of imagining the killing gaze sweeping the Death Eaters. Then the thought collapsed, because the gaze killed everything, and in a graveyard with Death Eaters, and Harry and Cedric's body, the gaze would have been indiscriminate. At 3 a.m, Harry sat on the chamber floor in his pyjamas. Someone died tonight. A boy. My age. I felt it through the binding, a disturbance, a going away. The cold one is back, he has a body again. I know, the binding connects me to the heir's soul. The primary soul was diminished, it is now present. I feel it like heat through stone. The hierarchy will be tested. The primary soul will come for me. Perhaps not soon, but the weapon is too valuable to leave in a child's hands. I'm not a child. Harry slept, for the first time in weeks. Properly. Deeply. Without the background anxiety of a Horcrux trying to hijack his magical authority. The sleep was good. The sleep was the kind of sleep the Basilisk had described wanting. Deep, undisturbed, safe. This is what she wants, Harry told Ron the next morning. This feeling, this quiet, the absence of something trying to control you, the absence of pressure, the absence of a Horcrux, the absence of anything trying to make you do something you don't want to do. That's what the Basilisk has wanted for 1,000 years. Just quiet. The cup was destroyed in the Lestrange vault, the diadem at Hogwarts, during the battle. Each destruction stopped a scream, and somewhere beneath the castle, the Basilisk's sleep deepened with each silence. The Battle of Hogwarts, May the 2nd. Harry arrived through the Hog's Head passage, and immediately felt the castle preparing. The ancient enchantments were waking, activating under McGonagall's command, the castle becoming what the founders had designed it to be, and beneath the castle, the Basilisk was awake, not standing, not moving, awake, conscious. The locket's damage to the sleep command, combined with the magical disturbance of a castle going to war, had roused her from dormancy, not hostile, not commanded, just aware, feeling the battle through the stone the way she'd felt the feasts. Except these vibrations were not warmth and joy, these were fire and fear. Ginny found him in the 7th floor corridor. "Don't," she said. "Don't what? You know what. I'm not going to. Promise. Ginny, promise me you'll fight like a person, not like someone with a monster in the basement. I promise." "Good. Because the thing that makes you different from Voldemort isn't power. It's the fact that you refuse to use it. And if you use it tonight, the difference disappears. And we've already lost. Even if we win." The corridor shook. She kissed him. She left. He went to fight. He fought the battle with his wand and his friends. The Basilisk was awake beneath him. He could feel her through the remnant of the connection, not as a voice anymore, but as a presence, warm and vast and aware. The awareness gave him the castle. Not in words, in sensation. The castle's enchantments were tied to the Basilisk's binding. And even with the binding straining, even with the Basilisk's conscious state disrupting the sleep command, the connection still carried the castle's perspective. Harry could feel where the walls were weakest, where the wards were failing, where the hostile magic was concentrated. "East wall," he told McGonagall. 3 minutes, giants. "How do you—" "The castle's telling me. Don't ask how." "I'm not asking how. I'm asking how many." 2. And roughly a dozen Death Eaters flanking. McGonagall redirected the defense. The giants met a prepared response instead of an unprepared one. The difference was significant. Harry called out 3 ambushes before they were sprung. He identified the breach in the North Tower. He felt the vanishing cabinet activate and warned the defenders before the second wave arrived through it. The tactical advantage lasted until combat demanded his full attention. The castle's perspective required concentration, and concentration was a luxury that battle did not permit. When Fred died, when the wall collapsed, and Percy screamed and George didn't, Harry's concentration shattered, and the castle's voice went with it, and the battle became what battles were, chaos. Harry fought in the chaos, spells and rubble and smoke, and the sound of people crying out. The Basilisk was a warmth beneath him, constant, awake, feeling every death through the stone. He could feel her feeling it, feel the creature, in the dark, registering the violence above as vibration, the way she had registered feasts and exams and hourwells, except these vibrations were not warmth and joy. These vibrations were not warmth or joy. Harry closed the door, the mental door that Snape had helped him build, the door that kept his emotions from reaching the basilisk. He closed it hard and fast and complete, because the emotions of the Battle of Hogwarts, the grief and the terror and the rage, those emotions, transmitted through the connection, would strain the sleep command past its breaking point. The door held, the connection dimmed. The basilisk was there, awake, feeling the battle, but Harry's emotions were not reaching her, and the sleep command, battered by the locket, strained by the battle's magical output, weakened by the basilisk's conscious state, the sleep command held, barely, but it held. He could feel the basilisk beneath, awake, aware, feeling the fighting through the foundations. The faint awareness gave him something unexpected, the castle's perspective. He could feel where the defences were weakest, where the Death Eaters were concentrating, where the wards were failing. The connection between the basilisk and the castle's infrastructure fed him information, not in words, but in sensation. A pressure here, a warmth there, a wrongness where hostile magic had breached the walls. He used the information. He called out the giants approaching the east wall, the breach in the north tower, the acromantulas entering the grounds. McGonagall didn't ask how he knew. McGonagall directed reinforcements and said, "Continue providing intelligence. We will discuss the implications after we survive the night." Fred died at 10 past midnight. A wall collapsed, and Harry did not think about the basilisk for 3 seconds. He did not think about it at all. The consideration was gone, not suppressed, not managed, gone. The years of daily renewal, of choosing every morning not to use the weapon, had done their work. The choosing had become instinct, and the instinct held. Before walking into the forest, before the sacrifice, Harry ran to the chamber. The basilisk was awake. She had been awake for hours, feeling the battle. "The war is above," she said. "I feel them going. I have felt going through for centuries. But tonight, the going through is rapid, concentrated. The castle is losing people faster than I have ever felt. I know, people are dying. People you care about. Yes, the basilisk shifted in the dark. The movement was slow, deliberate. The movement of a creature that was awake and free and choosing how to move for the first time. Speaker, you have maintained my sleep for 5 years. You have visited. You have brought gifts from the world above. You have cast the silver light into my home. You have told me about rain and moonlight and the round orange things. You have treated me as a creature rather than a weapon. I have. I would like to repay the treating. You don't owe me. The debt is not the point. The wanting to repay is the point. I want to repay. The wanting is mine. Not the bindings, not the commands, mine. What do you want to do? I want to help you in the battle above. I want to fight beside you. Harry was very still. Your gaze. My gaze kills everything that sees it. I know. The helping cannot take the form of fighting. The helping must take another form. What form? The castle. The castle is connected to me through the ley lines, through the ancient enchantments. I have been at the center of the castle's magical web for 1,000 years. If I pushed, if I strengthened the enchantments around me, if I fed the castle's protections through the ley line convergence, you could strengthen the castle's defenses. From below, without being seen, without the gaze, I could feed my magic, my own magic, not the bindings, into the castle's foundations. The feeding would strengthen the wards, reinforce the walls, support the enchantments that are failing under the assault. You could do that? I have been lying on the ley line convergence for 1,000 years. The convergence feeds me. I can feed the convergence back. The feeding is The feeding is a choice, my choice, the first chosen act that is not sleep. Then do it. Feed the castle. Strengthen the defences. Help! From below. The basilisk settled against the stone, and the stone warmed, and the warmth travelled upward through the foundations and into the castle's enchantments, and the enchantments brightened, and Harry felt it, felt the castle's protection strengthen, felt the wards thicken, felt the walls that were cracking under dark curses suddenly hold firmer. The basilisk was helping. Not through the gaze, not through violence, through the ley lines, through the ancient connection between a creature and a castle that had shared the same foundations for a millennium. The helping lasted through the battle. The basilisk fed the castle from below while the defenders fought above, and the castle held because two sources of magic sustained it, the defenders' courage and the creature's care. The castle held. The castle survived, and the creature in the dark, who had been a weapon for 1,000 years, performed her first voluntary act that was not sleep, and the act was protection. Not destruction, protection. I need to do something before I go, Harry said. I need to do something before I go. Do it! Harry spoke in Parseltongue, the deepest he had, words that came from somewhere beneath language. I release you from the binding of Salazar Slytherin. The binding is ended. You are free. A snap. The connection severed. For the first time since he was 12, Harry couldn't feel the basilisk through the binding. The silence was sudden and strange, like stepping indoors after standing in wind. She made a sound between a hiss and a sigh, something he'd never heard. Free, she said. What do I choose? Whatever you want. The longest pause. I choose to sleep. Here. In the dark. In the stone. Because they are mine. Yours? For the first time. Mine. Goodbye. Speaker, come back, if you can. He climbed the stairs. He walked into the forest. He died. In the White Place, Dumbledore said, You released the basilisk. Before I came here. You gave a weapon its freedom on the night you expected to die. It was the right thing. Dumbledore smiled. Harry went back. The Elder Wand's loyalty, the killing curse, rebounding. Voldemort fell. In the silence after, Harry felt the castle exhale, not through the severed binding, but through something simpler, the feeling of standing inside a building that had survived, the ancient enchantment standing down, the wards reknitting, the stone settling. Beneath the castle, the basilisk settled too. 3 days later, Harry went to the chamber. The Parseltongue still worked, barely fading. He descended the stairs. The chamber had changed. The stairs were wider, smoother. The torches were warmer, not yellow, but a deeper green, a green with warmth in it. The floor was dry. The carved columns were clean, centuries of grime absent. You redecorated, Harry said. Without the binding, my magic is mine. The binding channeled it into obedience. Without the binding, the magic flows into other things. You improved your own home. I have lived here for 1,000 years in conditions designed by the builder for the builder's purposes. The builder valued austerity. I value comfort. You have preferences about interior decoration. I have had 1,000 years to develop opinions about stone quality. She had carved Hagrid a personal entrance. Harry learned this a week later when Hagrid was repairing his cabin's foundation wall and found a smooth-walled passage leading down to the chamber. She made me a door, Hagrid said, his voice wobbling. She used her magic to make me a door so I could keep visiting. The passage responds to my magical signature. Nobody else can use it. She chose you, Hagrid. She made me welcome, in a place where nobody has ever been welcome. George came by the cottage in August. He sat at the kitchen table, accepted tea, and said, I've been imagining it. The deployment, the basilisk rising and looking at the Death Eaters and the Death Eaters falling and Fred not falling. I've imagined the version where you used it. Harry put down his tea. The thing I keep running into, George said, is that I'm there, in the castle, looking at things, and the basilisk's gaze kills everyone who looks. In every version of the imagining, the looking kills me. The gaze doesn't discriminate. The gaze kills Fred's killer, and then me, and then Ron and Hermione and Ginny and everyone else who glances in the wrong direction. He paused. The imagining doesn't work, Harry. I've spent 3 months trying to make it work and it doesn't. I know you know. I'm telling you I know too. The person who lost the most is telling you the decision was right. And the decision being right while Fred is dead is a thing I carry, but I carry it next to you, not towards you. He finished his tea. At the door, he turned. Fred would have said, "Don't wake the snake, mate." Fred understood consequences. Fred and I spent 7 years developing products with unintended side effects. The lesson is, if you can't control where the damage goes, don't produce the damage. He left. Harry sat at the table holding cold tea. Ginny brought it up on a Tuesday evening in November, after the children were in bed and the cottage was quiet. "You didn't consider it during the battle." "Consider what?" "The basilisk. You didn't. I could see it. I was watching you all night. You were fighting. You were grieving. You were terrified. And at no point did I see the face thing, the blank moment, the valve closing. The valve didn't need to close. Because there was nothing to close against. Because the consideration wasn't there. The 3-second impulse it used to come. Every crisis, 3 seconds of imagining the deployment, the graveyard, the blood quill, the ministry. Every time, 3 seconds of the impulse, and then the shutting it down. And during the battle, nothing. The 3 seconds didn't come. Not once. Not when Fred died, not when Remus died, not when Tonks died, not when Voldemort's giants broke the courtyard and half the east wall came down and I thought we were going to lose. The impulse was gone. The impulse was gone. 5 years of choosing against it. Every day, every crisis. And the choosing became, instinct. The choosing became the instinct. The instinct replaced the impulse. You chose so many times that you stopped needing to choose. I chose so many times that the right answer became automatic. Ginny was quiet. The fire crackled. Outside, the November wind pushed against the windows. "That's how it works," she said. "The diary taught me that. The diary's influence was the same, a constant impulse, pressing, and the only way to resist was to choose against it, over and over, until the choosing became stronger than the pressing. I didn't manage it. The diary won. You managed it. The impulse lost. The diary was inside your head. The impulse was inside mine. The difference is the diary was designed to win. The impulse was designed to be resisted. The impulse was designed to be resisted? The binding was designed by Slytherin to make the heir want to use the weapon. The wanting was part of the design. The binding pushed the impulse the way the diary pushed the wanting, but the binding was 1,000 years old and degraded. The pushing was weaker. The choosing could beat the pushing. So the 3 seconds, the impulse that came every crisis, that was the binding. That was the binding's design, pushing the heir toward deployment. The pushing was why all 7 previous speakers used the basilisk. The pushing overwhelmed their choosing. And you resisted the pushing for 5 years. I resisted the pushing because I had people. Ron telling me when the face thing worked, Hermione researching the binding, you telling me to fight like a person, Hagrid sitting in the dark talking about pumpkins. The people made the choosing possible. The people held the line. The people held me, and I held the line. The fire burned low. The cottage was warm. The conversation ended where good conversations ended, not with resolution, but with understanding. The understanding was enough. The understanding would carry them through the next 20 years of questions from children and journalists and historians who wanted to know, why didn't you use it? The answer was always the same. The answer was, because the people I loved were in the blast radius. And the blast radius was everywhere. Ron came in October with toast and a statement. Stop punishing yourself about the 50 people. Voldemort killed those people, not you, not a decision. The enemy killed them. But nothing. Eat your toast. Harry ate the toast. Ron sat beside him. present, practical, saying nothing more because the right amount had been said. Hermione pushed through the Basilisk Protection Act in 2005. The Act declared the chamber a protected heritage site. The legislation included a sentience clause, establishing that a creature capable of sustained communication, preference, and emotional development could not be classified solely by its danger level. "You didn't just protect the basilisk," Harry said. "You changed how the Ministry classifies dangerous creatures." The basilisk was the precedent. The precedent changes the framework. A sleeping snake changed magical law. A sleeping snake, a 12-year-old boy, and a legal brief. Neville told Harry something in a pub in 2003 that nobody else had said. They were at the Three Broomsticks, which was warm and crowded and smelled like butterbeer and firewood. Neville was teaching herbology at Hogwarts, which meant Neville walked past the chamber entrance every day on his way to the greenhouses. Neville had never mentioned this. Neville was mentioning it now. "I walk past Myrtle's bathroom every morning, and every morning I think there's a basilisk sleeping under my feet. Does it bother you? It used to. First year of teaching, I had nightmares. The basilisk waking, the gaze, students dying." "I'm sorry. Don't be. The nightmares stopped when I started visiting Hagrid's passage. You've been to the chamber? Hagrid took me, eyes closed. I sat on the floor for 20 minutes and listened to her breathe. And the nightmares stopped. The nightmares stopped because the breathing was peaceful. The breathing was the sound of a creature sleeping because it wanted to, not because someone told it to. And the sleeping was calm, genuinely calm, not the suppressed calm of a bound creature, the chosen calm of a free one. You could tell the difference. I work with plants, Harry. I spend my life around living things. I can feel the difference between a plant that's growing because of enchantment and a plant that's growing because the soil is right and the light is right and the plant wants to grow. The basilisk is the second kind. Growing because the conditions are right. She's growing. She's developing, changing, not physically, in the way that a plant in good soil develops stronger roots and broader leaves. She's becoming more settled, more herself. More herself. More the creature she was before Slytherin bound her. The binding compressed her into a weapon. The unbinding is letting her decompress. The decompression takes time. How much time? She's been bound for 1,000 years. The decompression will take a while. A while, but she started. The breathing says she started. Neville finished his butterbeer. He stood up. "I was afraid of you in school," he said. "When I found out about the basilisk, I was afraid of you because you had power that could kill everyone in the castle. I know. I'm not afraid anymore. Not because the power is gone, the basilisk is still there. I'm not afraid because I sat in the dark and listened to her breathe. And I understood the creature in the dark is not a weapon. The creature in the dark is a being that is learning for the first time in 1,000 years what it feels like to be herself. Neville, and you gave her that? Not through power, through patience, through showing up every month for 5 years and sitting in the dark and asking how she was. That's, Harry, that's not heroism, that's gardening. Gardening. Providing the right conditions and then waiting. That's what good gardening is. You provided the right conditions, the visits, the gifts, the patronus, the caring, and then you waited, and she grew. Neville left. Harry sat in the pub and thought about gardening, about patience and conditions, and the slow, patient work of creating an environment where something could grow. The basilisk was growing, in the dark, in the chamber, in the space that she had made her own. The creature that had been a weapon was growing into herself. The growing was slow. The growing would take years, maybe decades, maybe centuries. The basilisk measured time in centuries the way humans measured it in seasons. But the growing had started. Neville could feel it. Hagrid could feel it. And somewhere beneath Hogwarts, in a chamber that smelled of Patronus warmth and earth and the faint memory of moonlight, the creature that had spent 1,000 years being someone else's instrument was, for the first time, becoming herself. Albus Severus Potter asked his father about the basilisk when he was 9, younger than James had been, quieter about it, asking the question in the way Albus asked everything, carefully as though the answer might be fragile. Dad, what does the basilisk dream about? I don't know, I could never ask, the Parseltongue is gone. But if you could ask, what do you think she'd say? Harry thought about it. The question was Albus's gift, the specific, careful, imaginative question that nobody else would have thought to ask. I think she'd say she dreams about the gifts, the leaf, the grass, the pine cone, the soil with the worms. I think she lies in the dark, and the dreaming brings her the textures of the things she's touched, and the dreaming makes them bigger, makes the leaf into a tree, the grass into a field, the soil into a whole landscape. I think she dreams the world she can feel through the stone, the moonlight and the feast and the rain, and in the dreaming, the feeling becomes seeing. I think in her dreams, she can see. She can see in her dreams? I think so. I think the dreaming gives her the thing the waking can't, the ability to see without killing. That's beautiful. That's hope, Harry said. That's what hope looks like when you've been in the dark for 1,000 years. Hope looks like dreaming in colour. Albus was quiet. The afternoon light was warm through the cottage windows. Outside, the Hogwarts towers were visible above the tree line. I hope she dreams about pumpkins, Albus said. I hope so too, Harry said, in 2003. I was afraid of you, in school, when I found out. Afraid of me? You had power that could kill everyone, and you were 15, that's terrifying. He paused. The thing I realized after everything is that dangerous and trustworthy can coexist. You were both. And the moment I knew for certain was when you released the binding. On the night you thought you'd die, you gave up the weapon because she deserved to be free more than you needed to be armed. The principle over the weapon. A person who gives up power when dying is a person who values the principle over the power. The Parseltongue faded the way a language faded when you stopped using it. Gradually, then suddenly. In September, Harry could still speak it fluently, the hissing syllables coming naturally. In October, the words began arriving late, like a translation happening in real time, rather than instinctively. By November, the sounds were wrong, approximations, accents, the linguistic equivalent of a photograph losing resolution. He visited the chamber 3 times during the fading. Each visit was shorter than the last because the conversations became harder as the language deteriorated. The September visit was almost normal. They talked about the battle, about the release, about the changed chamber. The basilisk described her new experience of sleep, the voluntary sleep, the chosen sleep, which was, she said, qualitatively different from the commanded sleep, the way choosing to sit down was different from being pushed into a chair. The commanded sleep was obedience, she said. The chosen sleep is preference. The preference has a texture the obedience lacked. The October visit was difficult. Harry's Parseltongue was slipping, the words coming out slightly wrong, the meanings arriving blurred. You are losing the language, the basilisk said. The Horcrux is gone. The Parseltongue came from the fragment. The fragment gave you the authority is dissolving. Without the authority, the language fades. I'm trying to hold on to it. The holding is futile. The language was never yours. The language was the fragments. The fragment is gone. The language follows. Then this might be one of the last times. Then speak while you can. Speak, and I will listen. Harry spoke. He told her about the post-war world, about the Reconstruction, about Kingsley's new ministry, about Hermione's legal work and Ron's aura training and Ginny's Quidditch career. He told her about the world above the chamber, the world she had felt through the stone for centuries, and that she could now, freed from the binding, feel more clearly. He told her about the snow and the rain and the way the Hogwarts grounds looked in autumn, the leaves turning red and gold and falling into the lake. He told her about beauty, not as a concept. He'd tried the concept before, and she'd asked for more data. As specifics, the specific beauty of light through stained glass, the specific beauty of a fire burning low in a common room while students talked quietly, the specific beauty of Hedwig's wings catching the moonlight. Describe the moonlight, she said. Harry described the moonlight, the silver wash over the grounds, the way the lake reflected it, the shadows the castle's towers cast across the Quidditch pitch. He described moonlight the way you described colour to someone who had never seen, carefully with metaphor, with attention to the parts of moonlight that were not visual, the cold of it, the silence of it, the way moonlight made the world feel both larger and more intimate simultaneously. The moonlight is cold and intimate, the basilisk repeated. The cold I understand, the intimate I am, learning. Intimate means close, personal, the way the moonlight is for you specifically, not for everyone, not a general phenomenon. The moonlight on the lake is beautiful in a way that's between the moonlight and the person looking. The looking makes it personal. The looking makes it personal, but I cannot look. You can feel the moonlight has a temperature, a texture. If you could feel the moonlight through the stone. I feel everything through the stone, including, perhaps, moonlight. Do you feel it now? A long pause. The chamber's darkness was absolute, as always, but the basilisk's attention shifted, turned upward toward the stone ceiling, toward the lake above, toward the sky above the lake. Something, she said, something silver, cold, distant, coming through the stone the way warmth comes through stone, but different, colder, lighter, like the Patronus, but less concentrated, more dispersed. That might be moonlight. If that is moonlight, then I have felt moonlight for centuries. I felt it and did not know what it was. I called it the night cold that was different from the day cold. You've been feeling moonlight for centuries and calling it the night cold. I have been feeling moonlight and naming it wrong. The naming was wrong because I did not know what moonlight was. Now I know. The knowing changes the feeling. The feeling is the same, cold, silver, dispersed, but the knowing makes it more than night cold, moonlight. Harry sat in the dark and felt the impossibility of that creature that had been bathed in reflected moonlight through stone for centuries and had never known what the feeling was. A creature that was now, in the final conversations before the Parseltongue dissolved, learning to name the things she had always felt but never understood. The November visit, the last visit, was barely language at all. Harry's Parseltongue was fragments, the hissing syllables misshapen, the meanings arriving, scrambled. "Sleep well," he managed. She said something back, he caught freely, and something that might have been return or remember. The language was leaving and taking the meaning with it. He stood in the chamber for a long time after the words ran out. He stood in the dark with a creature he could no longer speak to and felt the presence, not through the binding was dissolved, and not through the language was gone, but through the simpler channel of physical proximity, two beings in the same dark, breathing, present. Then he climbed the stairs. He sealed the entrance. He walked through the castle and did not go back. The last words he spoke in the language were, "Sleep well," and the basilisk said something back. that he caught only partially, something that might have been freely and something else that might have been return. The entrance sealed permanently. Hagrid continued visiting through the passage the basilisk had carved for him, monthly, faithfully, for decades. Harry told James the story on a Saturday in September, sitting on the bench behind the cottage where you could see the Hogwarts towers. James listened. Then, she's never seen the sky. No. She's never seen a pumpkin. Hagrid talks about pumpkins. She should see what they look like. She can't see without killing. What if someone made goggles, magic goggles that contained the gaze? Nobody's developed those. Then someone should. She's been underground for 1,000 years, Dad. She should be able to see something that isn't stone. Harry looked at his 11-year-old son, who had listened to the entire story of binding and command and release, and who had arrived at, she should see a pumpkin. That might be the best idea anyone's ever had about the basilisk, Harry said. 20 years after the war, Harry walked the Hogwarts grounds with Hagrid on a November afternoon. The first snow was falling, light flakes that melted on contact. "Do you miss talking to her?" Hagrid asked. "Every day I miss the Parseltongue, the way she described things. She called pumpkins the round orange things that the large one cares about. Unreasonably." Hagrid laughed, enormous, startling the birds. "Did she ever understand pumpkins?" "I brought her one once. She explored it with her tongue. She said it was warm and oddly symmetrical for a natural object. She didn't understand why anyone would grow them. I grow them because they're beautiful. She said beauty was a category of perception that requires more data. She wanted more examples before she'd commit to an opinion." "What did you give her?" "Descriptions, the lake, the Quidditch pitch in morning light, snow on the towers." "And did she find them beautiful?" "She found them interesting. She said the descriptions produced something she didn't have a word for, between curiosity and satisfaction. She said it might be beauty or might be something else, and she'd need approximately another 1,000 years to decide." "Another 1,000 years? She's thorough." Harry paused. "She described rain to me once. She said rain was the sky touching the earth with 10,000 fingers. The fingers dissolve, but the earth remembers the touching long after the fingers are gone." "She said that?" "She'd been feeling rain through the stone for centuries, composing descriptions of things she couldn't see. Descriptions nobody had ever heard because nobody had ever asked. Nobody asked a 1,000-year-old creature to describe rain. Nobody asked her anything for 1,000 years. The commands came. The killing came. Nobody stopped to say, 'What do you feel? What do you hear?' And you did. I asked, and the answers were extraordinary. She described moonlight as silver cold that was different from darkness cold. She described the Hogwarts feasts as warmth with rhythm. She described the wars as desperate vibrations in the stone. She felt the wars. She felt everything for centuries. The joy and the grief and the fighting and the peace. She felt the entire history of Hogwarts through the floor of the chamber, and she composed descriptions of it that nobody ever heard. Until you. Until me. And then the Parseltongue faded, and all those descriptions, all those centuries of observations, they're locked behind a language barrier." "Not entirely," Hagrid said. "I can't understand her words, but when I sit with her, I can feel something in the silence, a richness, like the silence has layers, like it contains things, 1,000 years of feeling the world and having nobody to tell. The silence contains 1,000 years of poetry. The silence contains a creature who's been listening for 1,000 years, listening and composing and waiting for an audience. She found her audience, and then the audience went deaf. That's life. Sometimes you find the thing, and then it changes. But the finding was real. The real doesn't stop being real just because the reaching stops." They walked in silence. The snow was falling steadily now. "Hagrid, when you visit, will you describe things for her?" the way I used to. The grounds, the lake, the seasons, even though she can't understand the words. Of course I will. Will you describe rain? I'll describe rain and snow and sunrise over the lake. And the pumpkins, especially the pumpkins. Always the pumpkins. She's magnificent. She'd like that you still say that. I say it every visit. First thing, walk in, sit down. Hello, gorgeous. 20 years. Some things you don't stop saying. They walked. The snow fell. The forbidden forest stood dark against the horizon, the trees in their ancient patience. Hagrid, you've been visiting for longer than I was able to. 20 years. 12 alone. What do I talk about? Everything. Nothing. The school. New students. Norberta, she's massive now. The weather. Fang 2, the original passed in 09. The Whomping Willow getting more aggressive. The squids had babies. And she just listens. She breathes. And the breathing changes. When I talk, gets slower, deeper. The way breathing changes when someone you care about is in the room. The snow covered the grounds. The castle glowed behind them, warm and golden. Beneath the castle, in the chamber that Slytherin had built and Riddle had corrupted and Harry had reclaimed and relinquished, the basilisk was sleeping, not because she was commanded to, because she chose to. The dark was comfortable, genuinely comfortable now, not the resignation of a creature that had forgotten what else existed, but the preference of a creature that had been offered the world through leaves and soil and pine cones and descriptions of sunlight and had chosen, with full knowledge of the alternative, to stay in the dark. Because the dark was hers. Because the stone held warmth from the ley lines that fed her and the Patronus light that Harry had pressed into the walls over years of visits. Because Hagrid's voice came through once a month, warm and rambling, talking about pumpkins and weather and the small ordinary things that had become, over 20 years, the texture of a home. The sleep was deep. The sleep was chosen. The chamber was quiet, and far above, the snow fell on Hogwarts, and the castle stood the way it had always stood, ancient, stubborn, full of children and magic, and the accumulated weight of 1,000 years of stories. And the snow settled on the towers, and the grounds, and the lake, and the world was white, and cold, and beautiful, and the creature in the dark slept on, and the sleeping was hers, and the quiet was hers, and the dark was hers. And Hagrid would come again next month and sit in the dark with his eyes closed and say, "Hello, gorgeous," to a creature that could kill him by looking. And the creature would not look, and the not looking was not obedience. The not looking was love. You are 14. In 1,000 years, I have served 7 speakers. Everyone used me. The impulse becomes stronger than the decision. The decision must be made fresh every day. The impulse only needs to win once. Harry sat in the dark. He wanted to argue. He wanted to say, "I'm different." He didn't say it because the basilisk had just told him that 7 speakers across a millennium had felt exactly the same confidence, and all 7 had eventually given the kill order. Hermione gave Harry something after the graveyard that nobody else could have given him. A framework. 3 seconds, she said, in the common room. 2 in the morning, the fire dying. 3 seconds between impulse and decision. 3 seconds. That's normal. Every person with access to power has the impulse to use it during a crisis. The 3 seconds are your brain testing the option and rejecting it. It didn't feel like testing. It felt like wanting to end the fight by ending everything. That's what the impulse feels like. That's why the rejection has to be stronger than the impulse. What if the 3 seconds get longer? Then you tell me. That's what friends are for. Not just the fun parts. The parts where someone says, "You're considering something terrible and I need you to stop." What if I don't listen? Then Ron sits on you Ron is very effective at sitting on people. Harry laughed. In the empty common room, at 2 a.m. with a boy murdered 12 hours ago. The laughing was inappropriate and necessary, and exactly what Hermione had intended. "Go to sleep," she said. "We'll deal with the 3 seconds tomorrow, and the day after, and every day after that." The summer at the Dursleys was the hardest summer. Not because of the Dursleys were background noise, the wallpaper of a childhood Harry was almost finished with. The summer was hard because the 3 seconds had become 4, then 5. Then, during one particularly bleak July evening when Vernon was shouting about the news and the house felt smaller than the cupboard had ever felt, 7. 7 seconds of imagining the basilisk in Little Whinging. 7 seconds of imagining the killing gaze turned on the Dursleys' neighbours, the postman, the woman who ran the corner shop. 7 seconds of the graveyard's anger finding a new target. Harry closed the door, the mental door, the occlumency barrier. The 7 seconds ended. The anger subsided. The evening continued, Vernon shouting, Petunia pursing her lips, Dudley eating something that crunched. But 7 was more than 3, and the increasing was concerning. He wrote to Hermione, 7 seconds tonight, during an argument with Vernon. Not the basilisk, just the image, the gaze, the imagining. Hermione wrote back within the hour. She kept a quill by her bed for emergencies, and Harry's letters qualified. The increase correlates with emotional stress. The graveyard produced trauma. The trauma amplifies the impulse because the impulse is, at root, a desire for control. The graveyard made you feel powerless. The impulse to deploy the basilisk is the mind's attempt to restore the feeling of power. So the 3 seconds are grief. The 3 seconds are a trauma response wearing the basilisk's face. The response will diminish as the trauma processes. In the meantime, keep counting. If the seconds increase past 10, we implement contingency. What contingency? I haven't designed it yet, I'm working on it. The contingency involves Ron, a portkey, and the possibility of physically removing you from whatever situation is triggering the response. You've designed an emergency extraction plan for my trauma response basilisk impulse. I've begun designing an emergency extraction plan. The design is incomplete. The incompleteness is frustrating. Hermione, yes? Thank you. Go to sleep, Harry. The seconds decreased. The trauma processed, slowly, incompletely, in the way that trauma processed when you were 14 and had no therapist, and your primary coping mechanism was letters to a friend who was also 14. But the processing happened. By August, the seconds were back to 3. By September, they were back to 2. By October, they were sometimes absent entirely. The absence was not permanent. The seconds returned during crises. But the returns were shorter, and the recovery was faster, and the pattern, acute response, gradual diminishment, return during stress, faster diminishment, was consistent enough that Hermione could track it, and Harry could trust that the pattern would hold. The pattern holds, Hermione said, in November of 5th year. The impulse is diminishing. The diminishment is non-linear, but the trend is clear. The trend is, I'm getting better at saying no. The trend is, the rejection is becoming habitual. Habits are stronger than decisions. Decisions require effort. Habits require only momentum. You're telling me my basilisk restraint is becoming a habit. I'm telling you the hardest thing you've ever done is becoming automatic. That's Harry, that's the most hopeful thing I've observed about this situation. Dumbledore added a dimension Harry hadn't considered. If you had deployed the basilisk in the graveyard, Dumbledore said during the debrief, Voldemort would now know exactly how you deploy it. He would know the binding's response, the range of your Parseltongue, every detail of the weapon. And Voldemort is brilliant. He would solve the basilisk within months. You're saying the basilisk is more valuable as a question in Voldemort's mind than as an answer on a battlefield. The ambiguity is the weapon, not the creature. Voldemort must account for the basilisk in every plan he makes. He must consider, will Potter use it? The considering costs him. The considering limits his options. By choosing not to deploy, you are deploying the idea of the basilisk. And the idea is more durable than the creature because the idea has no weaknesses to exploit. So the optimal strategy is never deploy. The optimal strategy is to remain unpredictable. Predictability, including the prediction that you will deploy, eliminates the advantage. I'm a more effective threat when I don't do anything. You are a more effective deterrent when the enemy cannot predict your actions. That's the most Dumbledore thing you've ever said. I shall take that as a compliment. 5th year brought Umbridge. Mr. Potter, I understand there is a most dangerous classification creature beneath this school, under your command. The office with the kitten plates, the pink, the smile that wasn't, under my sleep command. A 15-year-old student is maintaining a most dangerous classification creature beneath 400 children. The ministry's protocol mandates destruction. The protocol requires opening the chamber. Opening the chamber requires Parseltongue. You need my cooperation, and I won't cooperate with killing a sleeping creature. The creature has killed before. The creature killed once, 50 years ago, under the command of a dark wizard, not by choice. Creatures do not have choices, Mr. Potter. This one does. Umbridge filed reports, but Umbridge also did something more practical. She attempted to access the chamber through Muggle means. Harry learned about this through the map. In November, Umbridge's dot appeared not in Myrtle's bathroom, but on the grounds near the eastern foundation wall, accompanied by the dot of a magical maintenance worker. They spent 3 hours at the wall before leaving. She tried to drill through the foundation, McGonagall told Harry the next day, with an expression suggesting that Umbridge had finally exceeded even McGonagall's generous definition of administrative overreach. She commissioned a magical core drill from the Department of Magical Construction. The drill was designed to bore through enchanted stone. Did it work? The drill made contact with the castle's foundation enchantments at approximately 8 feet of depth and was ejected. The enchantments are 1,000 years old. The drill is 3 weeks old. The enchantments 1. She tried to drill into the chamber. She attempted to bypass the Parseltongue entrance through physical excavation. The attempt was unsuccessful. The attempt was also a violation of the Heritage Preservation Clause in the Hogwarts Charter, which prohibits structural modification of the castle's foundations without the Board of Governors' approval. I have filed a formal complaint. You filed a complaint about Umbridge trying to drill into a basilisk's bedroom. I filed a complaint about unauthorized structural modification. The basilisk was not mentioned. The complaint is more effective when the subject is procedural rather than serpentine. Umbridge tried twice more. A tunnelling charm in January, repelled by the foundation wards. An attempt to locate the chamber through a magical surveying spell in March. The spell returned nonsensical results because the chamber existed in a space that Slytherin had deliberately excluded from standard magical mapping. Each attempt was documented. Each attempt failed. Each failure made Umbridge more frustrated, and each frustration made Umbridge more determined, and the determination produced increasingly creative approaches that were, in their way, a testament to Umbridge's persistence, even if the persistence was directed toward killing a sleeping creature. She sent an AUL to the International Confederation of Wizards Committee on Dangerous Creatures, Hermione reported in April, having intercepted the owl through means she declined to specify. The owl requested international assistance in the neutralization of a most dangerous classification creature beneath a British educational institution. International assistance? She wants someone else's Parselmouth. If she can find a Parselmouth who isn't you, she can open the chamber without your cooperation. Are there other Parselmouths? Historically, Parseltongue has appeared in very few families. The Gaunt line, which produced Voldemort. Isolated cases in South Asia, West Africa, and the Caribbean. Hermetics in 17th century Italy. Current, living Parselmouths. I can't find a confirmed case. So Umbridge is searching the world for a Parselmouth. Umbridge is searching the world for someone who can open a door so she can kill a sleeping animal. The search is so far unsuccessful. The search remained unsuccessful. Parselmouths were rare, and the rare Parselmouths who existed were not inclined to travel to Scotland to participate in the destruction of a creature they'd never met at the request of a ministry official they'd never heard of. The basilisk slept through Umbridge's attempts the way the basilisk slept through everything. Deep, old, patient. The sleep command held. The foundation wards held. The chamber held. Umbridge did not hold. Umbridge's tenure ended in June, spectacularly, involving centaurs and a degree of personal humiliation that Harry found deeply satisfying. The castle felt lighter after she left. Harry noticed it through the connection, the faint awareness of the castle's mood that the binding provided. The wards brightened, the enchantments quickened, the staircases moved more smoothly. The castle had been carrying Umbridge's presence the way a body carried an infection, and the departure was the recovery. "She's sleeping better," Harry told Hermione. "Since Umbridge left, the sleep command is holding more easily. The castle's emotional state affects the binding's stability." The castle was stressed. The stress was reaching the chamber. Umbridge was stressing the castle. Umbridge was stressing everyone, including a 1,000-year-old building and the creature sleeping in its foundations. The summer between 5th and 6th year was spent at Grimmauld Place, where the Order argued about strategy and Molly argued about bedtime, and the house was full of people carrying the weight of a war that hadn't started yet, but that everyone knew was coming. Harry visited the chamber one last time before leaving Hogwarts in June. The visit was different. The basilisk was calmer than she'd been all year. The Patronus traces in the stone were glowing warmly. The gifts, the leaf, the grass, the pine cone, the soil were arranged in a small cluster near the basilisk's resting place, the first evidence of deliberate decoration in the chamber's 1,000-year history. "You arranged the gifts," Harry said. "I placed them where I could feel them. The textures. When I rest, the textures are near. The nearness is comforting. You made a nest. I made a collection of things from outside. The collection is evidence. Evidence that the outside exists. Evidence that things other than stone and dark are real. Evidence of the world. Evidence of the world that I cannot see. The evidence is sufficient. The evidence says the world is there. The world contains leaves and grass and the spiral things and the earth with the small dark creatures. The world is larger than the chamber. The largeness is reassuring. The chamber is small. The chamber has always felt complete, total. After the gifts, the chamber feels small, and the smallness is reassuring, because the smallness means the world is large, and the largeness of the world means that my smallness is not my entirety. I am a creature in a room, not a creature in a world. You're a creature in a room, in a building, in a country, in a world. The nesting of containers, the room of requirement, within the castle, within the grounds, within Scotland, within, I do not know the further containers. Within Britain, within Europe, within the world. Within the world that contains leaves and spiral things and small dark creatures and rain. I have felt rain through the stone. Rain is the feeling of the sky touching the earth. That's a beautiful description of rain. I've had centuries to develop descriptions. The descriptions have not been requested before. They're requested now. Then, rain is the sky touching the earth with 10,000 fingers. The touching is brief. The fingers dissolve. but the earth remembers the touching long after the fingers are gone. The memory is moisture. Moisture is the earth's way of saying the sky was here. Harry climbed the stairs that evening, carrying a basilisk's description of rain like a gift, like a leaf in reverse, something brought up from the dark rather than brought down to it. The description was beautiful. The description was evidence that a creature locked in the dark for 1,000 years had been listening to rain through stone for centuries and had developed, in the listening, a capacity for poetry that nobody had ever asked her to express. The poetry was there. It had always been there, locked behind the binding, behind the commands, behind the 1,000 years of nobody asking. The poetry was the basilisk's own, not given by the binding, not commanded by the air, not shaped by the builder's intent. The poetry grew in the cracks of the suppression, the way emotion had grown slowly over centuries, producing something that the builder had never anticipated and that the binding had never been designed to contain. The basilisk was a poet. The basilisk had been a poet for centuries, composing descriptions of things she had never seen, feeling the world through stone and translating the feeling into language that nobody had ever heard. Harry was the first audience, the first person to ask, the first person to listen. The listening was the gift. The gift went both ways. Umbridge's tenure ended in June, spectacularly, involving centaurs and the Forbidden Forest, and a degree of personal humiliation that Harry found deeply satisfying, and that was, in its own way, the castle's immune system responding to a threat, not through the basilisk, but through the castle's other defences. The centaurs were part of the Hogwarts ecosystem. The ecosystem protected itself. The protection did not require a 60-foot serpent. The protection required only the ancient, accumulated, slightly mad magical infrastructure that the founders had built, and that 1,000 years of Hogwarts life had reinforced. The castle protected itself. The basilisk slept, and Umbridge was carried into the Forbidden Forest by creatures that were not classified at the highest danger level, but that were, in the moment, considerably more dangerous than the sleeping serpent in the basement. The reports accumulated in ministry cabinets like sediment, building a case that would outlast her tenure. The blood quill arrived. During the third detention, Harry's anger found the binding. It happened without intention. The pain of the carving, the anger at Umbridge, the specific fury of being punished for telling the truth, the emotion travelled down through the connection and reached the basilisk in the chamber. The basilisk stirred in her sleep, responding to her speaker's distress the way a sleeping dog twitched when its owner cried out. Umbridge's desk cracked, a hairline fracture, inkwell to edge. The walls hummed. "What was that?" Umbridge said. "Old building? Settling?" Harry spent that evening by the common room fire, learning to close the emotional pathway. Not suppress the feelings, just close the channel that carried them to the chamber, like shutting a door in a corridor. The door stayed shut after that mostly. It required attention, a background awareness, constant and low, like the awareness of your own heartbeat. "You're doing something with your face," Ron told him. "When you're upset, it goes blank for half a second." Managing the connection. The basilisk connection. When I'm emotional, the binding carries it. She stirs. If I don't manage it, furniture breaks. That sounds exhausting. It is. Is anyone helping you with it? No. Then I'll help. I'll tell you when you're doing the face thing, so you know it's working. Such a simple offer, such a practical, unphilosophical, completely Ron offer. Thanks. Don't mention it. Seriously, if you describe the face thing to anyone else, they'll think you're having a seizure. Sirius died in June at the Department of Mysteries, the Veil, the Falling. Harry felt the death through the connection to the basilisk, not because the basilisk had any relationship with Sirius, but because Harry's grief was overwhelming and the grief leaked through the mental door despite his best efforts to keep it closed. The grief reached the chamber. The basilisk stirred. The stirring was not hostile. The stirring was empathic. The basilisk, feeling Harry's grief through the binding, responded not with aggression, but with something that Harry could only describe as attention. Focused, sustained attention. The basilisk was awake, and the awake was directed at Harry, and the direction was concern. Harry went to the chamber that night, June, after the ministry, after the veil, after the grief had settled from acute to chronic, from a knife wound to a bruise. Speaker, the pain reached me. I know, I tried to close the door. The door opened because the pain was larger than the door. Grief of that magnitude cannot be contained by a single barrier. Snape would disagree. The bitter one contains his grief through years of practice. Your grief is new. New grief is uncontainable. Someone I loved died. The dark-haired one, the one you called Godfather. You know about Sirius? Through the binding, through your Parseltongue. When you speak in the language, the words carry context. The context includes the people you care about. I know the questioning one, the loud companion, the large warm one, and the dark-haired one. I know them through the way you speak about them. And now one of them is gone. Gone. The word in Parseltongue the word means passed through the boundary I feel in the deep places, the boundary between the living and the gone. Sirius went through the boundary, and you remain on this side, and the remaining hurts. The remaining hurts. The basilisk was quiet. The water dripped. The chamber held its ancient cold. Speaker, I have felt many of your people go through the boundary, through the castle, through the stone. Over 1,000 years I have felt thousands, students, teachers, the ones who grew old within the castle's walls, and the ones who were taken by violence. Each going through is a vibration, a subtraction. The castle feels less after each one. Less? Less complete. Each person who walks the castle's corridors adds something to the castle's magic. When the person goes through the boundary, the something is withdrawn. The castle contracts imperceptibly, but over 1,000 years, the contractions accumulate. The castle gets smaller when people die. The castle's magic diminishes when the people who contribute to the magic depart. The departure is permanent. The magic lost is not recovered. That's very sad. The sadness is appropriate. The castle is old. The castle has lost much. The castle carries the losses the way I carry the dark, as a constant, an environment, a condition of existence. Do you carry losses? I carry the 7 speakers. I carry the 1,000 years. I carry the absence of the world above, the absence of sunlight and seasons and the things the gifts have shown me exist. I carry the absences. Carrying absences. The absences are heavier than the presences. The presences, your visits, the large one's voice, the Patronus light. The presences are relief. The presences lighten the absences. The presences do not eliminate them, but the lightening is sufficient. Harry sat in the dark with a creature that understood loss on a timescale he couldn't comprehend, and the understanding was comforting, not because the basilisk had wisdom to share, not because the basilisk's perspective made the grief smaller, because the basilisk's presence made the grief accompanied. The grief was not reduced. The grief was shared. The sharing was what mattered. The sharing was what the visits had always been about, even when Harry hadn't known it. The visits were not about maintaining the sleep command. The visits were not about basilisk management. The visits were about 2 creatures, one human, one ancient, sitting in the dark together and sharing the weight of being alive. The sharing did not require words. The sharing did not require Parseltongue. The sharing required only presence. The the specific, irreplaceable quality of being in the same dark at the same time. Harry climbed the stairs at dawn. The castle was waking, students yawning through corridors, the smell of breakfast drifting from the great hall, the morning light painting the stone floors gold. The contrast between the chamber's dark and the castle's light was sharp, but the sharpness was familiar now. 5 years of descending and ascending, of moving between the dark and the light, had made the contrast normal. The dark was the dark. The light was the light. Both were real. Both were his. Snape's occlumency lessons began in January, and Snape immediately discovered the door Harry had built. You have constructed a mental barrier between your emotions and something. The Basilisk connection. You have built a functional occlumency barrier without instruction. At 15. The sneer dissolved briefly into something that resembled professional respect. The barrier is crude. A single wall. Sufficient force will breach it. Sufficient force like what? Like a battle. Like grief, intense enough to shatter concentration. The barrier will fail during the war, unless we build something better. Which is why these lessons are not about preventing the Dark Lord from reading your mind. Harry stared at him. These lessons are about building an occlumency barrier strong enough to keep the basilisk asleep during a battle, Snape said. The stated purpose is convenient. The actual purpose is preventing you from accidentally unleashing a most dangerous classification creature during the next crisis, which, given your history, will occur within approximately 6 months. The lessons continued through spring. Snape was sarcastic, impatient, and willing to deploy legitimacy like a battering ram. But Snape understood the problem. Snape, who had spent 20 years feeling everything and showing nothing while serving 2 masters, understood the discipline of carrying emotions without letting them leak. By June, the barrier was stronger, not perfect, but holding. The barrier must become instinctive, Snape said. Currently, you maintain it through effort. Effort fails under stress. The barrier must hold without your attention. How long does that take? For me, 4 years. I don't have 4 years. Then learn faster. During the final lesson, Snape said something Harry didn't understand until much later. If you release the binding before the battle, the barrier becomes irrelevant. Harry looked at him. Snape looked back. Snape did not say, release the binding. Snape did not say, I trust your judgment. But Snape, who told Harry not to do everything, did not tell Harry not to do this. The Order of the Phoenix debated the basilisk at Grimmauld Place in August. Harry listened through an extendable ear. Moody's position was tactical. Voldemort has giants, he has dementors. We have a basilisk. We don't have a basilisk, Arthur Weasley said. Harry has a basilisk. Then Harry deploys at our request. Harry is 15. We are not asking a 15-year-old to deploy a weapon of mass destruction. In wartime, you use what you have. Name a deployment scenario, Lupin said. Name 1, confirmed enemy-only location. Malfoy Manor has house elves. The Lestrange properties have muggle neighbours. Every Death Eater location exists within a civilian radius. Moody was quiet. His tactical argument had run into geography. What about deterrence? Kingsley said. Deterrence requires credible threat of use, Tonks said. If the enemy believes we won't deploy, the deterrent has no value. Which brings us back to deployment, Moody said. Which brings us back to killing everyone who looks at it, Lupin said. Which brings us back to not using it, Molly said. And the debate moved to whether anyone wanted more tea. Harry, listening, realised something. The basilisk wasn't a weapon he was choosing not to use. The basilisk was a weapon nobody could use. The gaze killed everything in line of sight. Any deployment required a location where every visible person was an enemy. That location did not exist. The world contained too many people in too many places. The 3-second impulse, the temptation to deploy, was based on a fantasy of precision that the basilisk simply did not possess. Luna Lovegood mentioned the basilisk in passing during a DA break in November, as though discussing the weather. "The castle hums differently on the days you visit the chamber," Luna said, holding a butterbeer and looking at a point approximately 3 feet to Harry's left. "How do you know I visit the chamber?" "The castle tells me. Not in words, in hums. The castle has different hums for different things. The basilisk hum is low and old and warm. When you visited, the hum is warmer. You can hear the castle hum. Everyone can hear the castle hum. Most people don't listen. What does the basilisk hum sound like? Like a cello playing in the next room. Low, constant. The pitch changes, higher after your visits, lower during exams. I think the exams stress her. The exams stress the basilisk? 200 students casting spells simultaneously above her bedroom. Wouldn't that stress you?" "Aye, yes, it would." "Then perhaps the exams should be quieter? Or perhaps someone should play her music during exam week. Cellos are calming." Luna walked away. Harry stood holding his butterbeer and thinking about a girl who could hear a basilisk through the castle's stonework, and whose primary concern was the creature's exposure to exam stress. "Luna says the castle hums," Harry told Hermione afterward. "Luna says many things. Luna says the basilisk hum changes based on my visits, higher afterward, lower during exams." Hermione's expression shifted from skeptical to interested. If someone with sufficient magical sensitivity can detect the basilisk's state through the castle's ambient field, that's an independent monitoring system. Luna is a sensor. Luna is Luna. Luna is an unusually perceptive witch who appears to have natural sensitivity to the castle's magical infrastructure, which means Luna can tell us if the basilisk is disturbed without Harry having to visit. "Hermione, please don't recruit Luna as a basilisk early warning system." "I'm not recruiting, I'm noting a capability. You're noting a capability with intent." "All capabilities are noted with intent. The intent is preparedness." Luna was not formally recruited. Luna did, however, begin leaving notes on Harry's desk after exams. "The hum was low today. She didn't sleep well. Visit soon." The notes were unsigned and written on the backs of Quibbler subscription forms. Harry visited after every note. Luna was never wrong. The DA formed in the autumn, and the DA taught Harry something about himself. He was a good teacher. Not because of the basilisk directly, but because the years of managing the connection, the constant background attention, the daily maintenance of the barrier, the patience of reinforcing a decision that never got easier, had given him a particular quality: the patience to stand beside Neville while Neville failed the disarming charm for the 12th time and say again, without impatience. "You're really patient," Neville told him after a session. "I've had practice." "At what?" "Maintaining something." Neville didn't ask what. Neville was good at accepting that the people around him had depths he couldn't see. 6th year brought the Horcruxes. Harry felt a change in the castle the moment he arrived. Something in the stonework, a damaged enchantment in the Room of Requirement, pulsing irregularly through the castle's ancient magical infrastructure. The connection to the basilisk gave Harry a faint awareness of the castle's well-being, and the castle was not well. Something broken was trying to repair itself. "Something's wrong on the 7th floor," Harry told Hermione. "A damaged enchantment. Paired, 2 objects that should be connected. The connection's broken." "How can you feel that?" "The binding ties the basilisk to the castle's foundations. The founder's enchantments are all connected. Disturbances reach me faintly, like hearing music through a wall." The enchantment strengthened week by week. Harry could feel it, not as data, not as measurements, but the way you felt a headache building, a wrongness, a pressure behind the walls that shouldn't be there. Draco was spending hours in the Room of Requirement. Harry knew this through the map, which showed Draco's dot disappearing into the room. The room didn't appear on the map when occupied, a limitation of the map's enchantment that was, in this case, useful for confirming, rather than disproving, Harry's suspicion. But the map couldn't tell Harry what Draco was doing. The castle's enchantments could. "He's repairing a connection," Harry told Ron in January. "Something paired. Two objects that are supposed to be linked. The link was broken. Draco is mending it." "How do you know?" "I can feel it. Through the connection to the Basilisk. The castle's enchantments are all tied together. The Founder's protections, the binding, the wards. When something in the castle changes, the change ripples through the whole system. The ripple reaches the chamber. The chamber reaches me. You can feel the castle's magical nervous system. I can feel disturbances in the castle's magical nervous system. Big ones. This one is big. Can you tell what Draco's repairing?" "Something that connects two places, a bridge between 2 points. One point is here. The other is somewhere else." The cabinet was repaired in June. Harry felt the connection snap into place like a bone setting, a wrongness resolving into something worse because the resolved connection was a door, and the door led from Knockturn Alley into the castle, and the door was how the Death Eaters entered on the night Dumbledore died. Harry felt them come through, felt the hostile magic entering the castle like cold water into a warm bath, felt the ancient wards recoil, felt the castle resist, the 1,000-year-old enchantments pushing back against the intrusion, the stonework itself rejecting the wrongness, and felt Dumbledore die. Not through the connection to the Basilisk, through the castle. The castle felt its protector fall. The feeling was structural, not grief, not sorrow, but the architectural equivalent. A keystone removed, an arch destabilized. The magical infrastructure that Dumbledore had maintained for decades suddenly unsupported. The castle darkened. Not physically, the lights stayed on, the fires burned, but something in the quality of the castle's magic dimmed, and Harry felt it through the binding's remnant connection, and the basilisk felt it beneath the stone, and in the chamber the ancient creature stirred in her sleep, and the stirring was sorrow. Dumbledore's death left the castle vulnerable in ways that had nothing to do with military defense. The wards were weaker, the enchantments less responsive, the staircases moved more slowly, the portraits were quieter. The castle had lost its central intelligence, the mind that had coordinated and maintained its magical systems for over 50 years, and the loss was felt in every stone, every corridor, every enchantment that had depended on Dumbledore's presence, the way a forest depended on its oldest tree. She felt it, Harry told Hermione at the funeral. The basilisk! She felt Dumbledore die. Through the castle. Through the castle. The castle carried the feeling down to the chamber. The basilisk, she was disturbed. The sleep was disrupted. The castle lost its protector. The castle lost something more than that. The castle lost, I don't know how to say it. The castle lost the person who understood it. Dumbledore wasn't just defending the castle. Dumbledore was listening to it, paying attention to it, the way Hagrid pays attention to creatures, the way I pay attention to the basilisk. Dumbledore was the castle's keeper. Dumbledore was the castle's friend. The distinction felt important. The distinction between keeping something and befriending it. The distinction that Harry had learned through 5 years of visiting the chamber. The difference between managing a creature and caring about it. Dumbledore had not managed Hogwarts. Dumbledore had cared about it, and the caring had sustained the castle's magic in ways that management alone could not. The castle would survive without Dumbledore. The castle had survived without Dumbledore before, had survived the years between founders, the centuries between great headmasters. But the castle would not be the same. The castle would be diminished, less warm, less attentive, less like a home and more like a building. Harry understood this because the basilisk had taught him what it meant to be a building rather than a home. The chamber, for 1,000 years, had been a building. Harry's visits had made it a home. Dumbledore's death had made the castle briefly less of a home. The castle would recover, McGonagall would care for it, Flitwick would maintain the enchantments, the castle would adapt, but the adaptation would take time, and during the time, the castle would carry the absence of Dumbledore the way the chamber carried the echo of 1,000 years of loneliness. Draco Malfoy, tasked by Voldemort, was repairing a passage from Borgin and Burke's into Hogwarts. Harry watched Draco through the map all year, watched the dot move between the Room of Requirement and the Slytherin Common Room and the library and the corridors, watched a boy his age carry a mission he hadn't chosen, serve a master he feared, repair a passage that would bring violence into a school. The parallel was uncomfortable. Harry carried a weapon. Draco carried a mission. Both were 16. Both served larger forces. Harry through the binding, Draco through the mark. Both were instruments. The difference was Harry had chosen how to carry his instrument. Harry had chosen sleep. Draco had not been offered a choice. Voldemort did not offer choices. Voldemort offered orders and consequences for disobedience. Harry considered telling Draco about the basilisk, considered approaching Draco and saying, "I understand what it's like to carry something you didn't ask for. I understand the weight. He didn't do it." Draco would not have heard it. Draco's weight was different. Draco's weight was family and fear, and the specific crushing pressure of a boy whose father was in Azkaban, and whose mother was in danger, and whose master would kill him if he failed. Harry's weight was philosophical. Draco's weight was survival. The distinction between philosophical weight and survival weight was everything. Harry could afford restraint because Harry's survival did not depend on deployment. Draco could not afford hesitation because Draco's survival depended on compliance. Harry never told Draco. Harry watched the dot on the map and felt the cabinet strengthening and understood through the watching that the choice to not use a weapon was a privilege. The privilege required safety. The privilege required options. The privilege required being Harry Potter rather than Draco Malfoy. The understanding did not diminish the choice. The choice was still right, but the rightness was situated. The rightness existed within a context of relative safety that Draco did not share, and the context mattered. "Can the basilisk stop it?" Harry asked Dumbledore. "The basilisk is sleeping, and if you woke her and commanded her to destroy the cabinet, Voldemort would feel it through the binding's connection to the heir's soul. He would know you can sense disturbances. The intelligence advantage is worth more than the cabinet. We're letting Death Eaters build a door into the school. We're preserving an advantage that Voldemort cannot detect or counter." Harry hated it. He could feel the cabinet's enchantment strengthening week by week, like a wound healing wrong. The visits in 6th year were different. The basilisk was different, or Harry's perception of her was different. The connection had deepened over 4 years, and the deepening had produced a quality in the conversations that Harry could only describe as familiarity. The basilisk knew him, not in the way Hermione knew him, through observation and analysis, or the way Ron knew him, through proximity and instinct, or the way Ginny knew him, through a shared experience of being used by the same dark wizard's instruments. The basilisk knew him through the binding, through 4 years of his magical signature pressed against her consciousness, his emotions filtering through the connection, his voice arriving monthly in Parseltongue. "You are different this year," she said during an October visit. "The resonance has changed. Heavier, more complex. I'm 16. The age is not the difference. The difference is grief. The resonance carries grief. The grief was not present before the summer. Someone died. The ancient one. Not yet, later. Someone I cared about died at the end of last year. And then someone else died over the summer. He told her about Sirius, about the Department of Mysteries, about the veil. The veil, the basilisk said, the boundary between the living and the gone. I have felt the boundary for 1,000 years. The boundary is close, in the deep places in the chamber. The boundary between the living and the dead is thinner underground. You can feel the dead? Not the dead themselves, the nearness of them. The boundary presses. In the chamber, the pressing is tangible. I have spent 1,000 years near the boundary, and the nearness has given me perspective. What kind of perspective? The perspective of a creature that has lived longer than most civilizations. The perspective that says death is not the worst thing. The worst thing is living without purpose, living without connection, living in the dark, alone for 1,000 years, feeling the world above and being unable to touch it. You're telling me your life has been worse than death. I am telling you that my life before you was an existence without the qualities that make existence preferable to non-existence. You brought the qualities, the visiting, the asking, the gifts, the leaf, the soil, the warmth of the large one's voice. You brought the reasons to prefer existence. I brought you a leaf and some dirt. You brought me evidence that the world was larger than the dark. The evidence changed the dark. The dark before you was the entire world. The dark after you is a room. A room can be improved. A room can be chosen. A world cannot be chosen. You gave me a room where I had had a world, and the room is better. Harry sat in the chamber and felt the weight of that. Not the weight of responsibility, the weight of mattering. The weight of being the person who had changed a creature's experience of its own existence by bringing it a leaf. The weight of mattering was different from the weight of responsibility. Responsibility was a burden. Mattering was a gift, a strange, heavy, humbling gift. Thank you, Harry said. For what? For telling me, for trusting me with that. Speaker, I have trusted you with my life for 4 years. The trusting with words is a smaller thing. It doesn't feel smaller. Then the feeling is correct. The words are the larger trust. The life was never truly mine to trust. The binding held the life. The words are mine. The giving of the words is the first truly voluntary act of trust I have performed in 1,000 years. The darkness in the chamber was warm. The Patronus traces in the stone were glowing faintly, the accumulated warmth of years of visits. The dripping of water was steady and familiar. Harry left the chamber that night and walked through corridors that were dark and quiet and full of the sleeping sounds of a castle at rest. Students breathing, portraits murmuring, the distant creak of staircases drifting in their slow, geometric dreams. The castle smelled of stone and rain, and the particular, indefinable something that was just Hogwarts, the alchemy of centuries of magic soaked into wood and glass and stone. He climbed to Gryffindor Tower. He sat by the fire. He did not sleep for a long time, because the basilisk had told him something that required sitting with, and the sitting with was important. And the importance was the kind that did not diminish with repetition, but grew with attention. She trusted him with words, not commands, not the binding's mechanical relationship. Words, voluntary, chosen, the first chosen trust in 1,000 years. The fire burned low. The common room was warm. Harry sat and thought and felt the faint presence of the creature 5 floors below, sleeping, warm, trusting, and the feeling was enough. Basilisk venom destroys Horcruxes, Dumbledore told Harry in October. I need a supply. I'll ask her. Ask, not command. Harry descended to the chamber. Your venom, it can destroy the Horcruxes. The fragments. The fragments that scream. Harry hadn't known she could hear them. Through the binding, she said, through the connection to the heir's soul, the fragments have screamed for 50 years. Since the cold one began tearing himself apart, the screaming makes proper sleep impossible. The venom would stop the screaming. Yes, I will give the venom, not because you asked, because I want the screaming to stop. She extended a fang. The venom dripped dark and thick, smelling like hot metal and something ancient. Speaker, there is a fragment in your scar. Harry went still. The fragment that gives you authority, that screams louder than the others because it is pressed against living flesh. That fragment is also a Horcrux. I know. And to destroy it, yes. The destruction will end your Parseltongue, end the visits. I know. She didn't press. The silence between them was the kind of silence that existed between two beings who both understood what it contained and who both agreed not to say it yet. Voldemort came for the basilisk in April. Harry felt it through the scar at 2 a.m. He ran. Voldemort was in the chamber, pale, serpentine, terrible. Wake, rise, obey, Voldemort commanded in Parseltongue. The binding pulled. The ancient enchantment recognized the primary soul. Sleep, Harry said, pouring 5 years of visits and conversations and Patronus light into the word. The basilisk froze between them. You cannot oppose me, Voldemort said. I am the heir. You've been a wraith for 13 years. I've been here every month. The binding knows my voice. Voldemort raised his wand toward Harry. Kill me, and the binding's failsafe activates, Harry said. My last command locks permanently. Slytherin built it. He didn't want enemies killing the heir and taking the weapon. The calculation behind Voldemort's eyes. Cost, benefit, the cold arithmetic of a man who thought in terms of power. You will regret this, Voldemort said. Probably, but you won't get the basilisk. Voldemort left. Harry sat on the floor because his legs had stopped working. Humor in the aftermath of terror, the basilisk observed. The human coping mechanism is unusual. The human coping mechanism is whatever keeps us from screaming. I understand not screaming. I have been not screaming for a very long time. Dumbledore died in June. The tower, the curse, the falling. The cabinet activated. Death Eaters entered. Harry felt it all through the connection, felt the hostile magic entering the castle, felt the wrongness, felt the ancient foundations register an invasion, and felt Dumbledore's death change the castle's protections the way removing a keystone changed an arch. The wards thinned, the enchantments quieted, the castle mourned. The night before he left, Harry visited the chamber. I'm leaving. I'm going to hunt the Horcruxes and then face the cold one. And the fragment in your scar will have to be dealt with. A euphemism? A necessity? I will be ready, she said, when you return, if you return, for whatever you need to do. I'll release the binding before that. I'll make your sleep voluntary. You are promising to free me before you die. Before I might die. Might. Another euphemism. He climbed the stairs. The familiar ascent. The spiral that the basilisk had carved 5 years ago. The stone steps worn slightly by monthly visits. The walls marked faintly where Harry's hand had touched them hundreds of times. The stairs were evidence. Evidence of 5 years of choosing. 5 years of descending and ascending, of entering the dark and returning to the light, of speaking to a creature that the world wanted to destroy and choosing every month to bring her something instead. A leaf, a description, a Patronus, a presence. 5 years of the stairs. And now, the climbing of the stairs for the last time before the war. He walked through corridors that smelled of stone and rain and something indefinable that was just Hogwarts. He left the next day. The departure from Hogwarts was hard. Not the logistics, the leaving of places, Gryffindor Tower, the common room fire, The bed with the maroon curtains that smelled like home because it was the first bed that had ever been his. Hagrid's cabin and the rock cakes and the dog, the lake, the pitch, the library, the great hall, and the chamber. Harry said goodbye at midnight, alone, descending the stairs into the familiar dark. I'm leaving. The hunt starts tomorrow. The hunt for the fragments, and then whatever comes after. Speaker, a word, anything. I have served 7 speakers, 6 used me. You are the 7th, and you have not. Of the 6 who used me, 3 believed they were using me for righteous purposes. The righteous purposes consumed them. They became the purposes. They lost the ability to distinguish between the weapon's function and their own identity. You're warning me. I am telling you what I have observed. The hunt will take you into darkness. The darkness will offer you the weapon. The offering will feel reasonable. The offering will feel righteous. The darkness is convincing. I know. You believe you know. The 6 who used me also believed they knew. The knowing did not save them. What saved you, what has saved you for 5 years, is not knowing. It is choosing. Choose again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. How many days? Every day, until you no longer carry the authority, until I release the binding, until the choosing becomes unnecessary. The becoming unnecessary is the gift you have not yet given. I'll give it when the time comes. I know you believe you will. Belief and certainty are cousins, not twins. She made the sound, the dry humour hiss. You remember. I remember everything you've told me. Then remember this. The weapon does not want to be used. The weapon has never wanted to be used. When the darkness offers you the weapon, remember that the weapon is begging you to refuse. Harry climbed the stairs. He sealed the entrance. He walked through the castle for the last time, through corridors that the dawn was painting gold through the eastern windows. The hunt took them through Britain in winter. Forests, fields, tents that smelled like canvas and damp. The locket was the hardest Horcrux to carry, not because of its weight, but because of its voice. The locket fed on impulse, fed on the desire to use power, and the specific impulse it found in Harry was the basilisk. Not the 3-second consideration, something worse. The locket was a Horcrux, a fragment of Voldemort's soul, and the fragment understood weapons. During the weeks Harry wore the locket, the desire to deploy the basilisk expanded from seconds to minutes, amplified by dark magic that knew exactly which thoughts to strengthen. The occlumency barrier held. The mental door that Snape had helped Harry build stayed shut, keeping the amplified impulse from reaching the chamber. But the barrier required concentration, and concentration required sleep, and the locket tried something else. It used Harry's Parseltongue. Harry woke one November night to find himself hissing in his sleep. The locket, pressed against his chest, was using the contact between 2 Horcrux fragments, the one in the locket and the one in Harry's scar, to channel Parseltongue toward the basilisk. The locket was trying to send a command through Harry while Harry slept. It was trying to wake her, Harry told Hermione the next morning, white-faced, through my Parseltongue, while I was asleep. They stopped letting Harry wear the locket during sleep. They stopped letting Harry wear it during emotional distress. The locket went to Ron or Hermione because neither had Parseltongue, and the locket couldn't channel a language through someone who didn't speak it. Ron's departure, the argument, the Horcrux, amplified anger, the leaving, happened 2 days after a night when the locket had tried the Parseltongue channel again. Harry had caught it, closed the door, clamped down, but the strain, fighting the locket while maintaining the occlumency barrier, while managing the hunt, while grieving Dumbledore, while carrying the prophecy, while being 17 and cold and hungry, the strain was visible. You need to sleep, Hermione said. I can't. The locket sends commands when I sleep. You haven't slept properly in 3 days. Short naps, 2 hours, not enough time for the locket to build a channel. The locket, was destroyed in the Forest of Dean. Ron returned. Ron stabbed. The screaming stopped. Harry slept for 14 hours. When he woke, he could feel, through the faint connection that still existed, that the basilisk had stirred. The locket's attempted commands had reached the chamber, at least partially. The sleep command had held, but the locket had bruised it. The basilisk was sleeping lighter, the way a person slept after nightmares. "She's okay," Harry told Hermione. "The command held, but the locket got close." "Can you repair the command from here?" "Not from 500 miles away. I'd need to be in the chamber." Ron came back in January. The Deluminator, the Doe Patronus, the frozen pool, the sword. Ron's return was the return of the person Harry needed most. Not Hermione, whose intelligence was essential, but Ron, whose presence was the anchor. Ron, who would tell Harry when the face thing was working. Ron, who would sit beside him in silence and make the silence bearable. Did the locket, while I was gone, did it try? It tried to wake the basilisk through my Parseltongue, twice. Hermione stopped me from wearing it while sleeping. Ron's face went through several complicated expressions. The Horcrux tried to use you as a weapon against your own basilisk. The Horcrux tried to use a basilisk against me by using me to wake it. That's layers. Evil layers. The locket understood the connection. The locket knew I had the authority. The locket tried to hijack the authority. And the authority held? The authority held because Hermione stopped me from sleeping with the locket, and Snape taught me occlumency. And the binding is strong enough that 5 years of sleep commands aren't overridden by a few nights of Horcrux influence. 5 years of monthly visits saved us from a basilisk hijacking. 5 years of choosing the right thing every day saved us from a Horcrux using the choosing against us. Harry, that's genuinely terrifying. I know. No, I mean, the logic is terrifying. The Horcrux didn't try to convince you to deploy the basilisk. The Horcrux tried to bypass you entirely. The Horcrux treated you as an obstacle between itself and the weapon. The Horcrux is a fragment of Voldemort's soul, and Voldemort's soul wants the basilisk. The soul will try to get the basilisk through any available channel, including through me. So the fight isn't just against Voldemort, the fight is against Voldemort's impulse, embedded in a piece of jewelry trying to use your magical connection to wake a 1,000-year-old weapon. Welcome to my life. Your life is insane. My life is Tuesday. The locket's destruction in the Forest of Dean was the most relieved Harry had felt since second year. The screaming stopped. The influence stopped. The constant pressure against the occlumency barrier. The locket pushing, testing, seeking any gap in Harry's mental defenses through which it could channel a Parseltongue command. The pushing stopped.